Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's good to be in the Capitol. I'm Rae Oliver Davis. I serve on the Board of Advisors to NAIA. I'm delighted to kick off our first bill for NAIA. He is our go-to privacy guy. I call Steve a bit of a triple threat because he is triple certified in AI privacy and data governance, and he is our go-to guy. So thanks for being here, Steve. And next to him, we have Rick Hill. Rick is the Vice President of Industry Technology for the Mortgage Bankers Association. Before joining the MBA, Rick was the Director of Data Strategy at Fannie Mae, and he began his career as a senior auditor at Deloitte. Right to my right here is Irv Dennis. Irv is serving as the Principal Deputy Chief Financial Officer at HUD, and he served as CFO under Dr. Ben Carson's leadership. And I personally observed Irv lead the department to a clean audit opinion after decades of disclaimers. So good on you, Irv. He wrote a book about it, too. He authored a book called Transforming a Federal Agency, Management Lessons from HUD's Financial Reconstruction. And before that, he was a distinguished partner at EY. So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. Yeah, thank you. So I think we'll kick off giving you each an opportunity to give kind of your own unique perspective from your vantage point. And Irv, why don't I start with you? What do you think our biggest opportunities are with AI, and what do you think our biggest challenges are?
Yeah, does this work?
Oh, it should. Doesn't work.
Okay, thank you, Rae, and thanks for inviting me, and it's good to be here. Yeah, I'm really focused on fiscal responsibility in government. I am very focused on making sure taxpayer funds do not get wasted and they're free of fraud, waste, and abuse. And my background, as you mentioned, is financial. I'm a CPA by trade, spent 38 years with Ernst & Young in the audit world, so I know what fiscal responsibility is. And we cleaned house under Trump 45 administration by turning the financials around inside the House. I came back to focus on how money is being spent. We send out about $77 billion a year to grantees and public housing authorities. We really don't know how they're using the funds. And so what I'm focused on is understanding what happens to the money once it leaves HUD, not only at the grantees, but how they're spending it. And we're setting up a subrecipient database to track all of that. Public housing authorities, grantees get funds. We'll send them $1,000 as an example. They'll take that $1,000 and send it out to 7 or 8 different organizations, entities. They'll send it out, and we don't have visibility as to what happens with it. We're using AI to help us set up this subrecipient database, and it's a very exciting project. We are collecting, we've piloted the program with much success. We are collecting cash disbursements, invoices, and contracts, not only with the grantee, but also with their subrecipients. So we want to make sure the money is being used free of conflict and at the right price at the right time and conforms with the grant agreements. And we are using AI for that. Once we get that information on a PDF form, we're using AI to convert it, put it into a data lake, and then in that data lake, we're going to measure it against a lot of different other forms, structured or unstructured data that's out there. For an example, we will take the ownership of the subrecipient and make sure that there's no conflicts. Make sure that there's no conflicts with the grantee or the PHAs. We'll make sure that the pricing is consistent with what we're seeing with other pricing throughout, and we're going to measure it against the IRS forms. We'll measure it against the legal forms out there, and we're using AI for all of that. And it's a fascinating process. I got Congress very supportive of it. I have multiple meetings with the appropriators and the authorization committees, staff. The White House is very excited, and this has lots of applicability not only at a federal level but also at a state and local. So we're using AI in all of that, and I think the biggest challenge, as you ask, on this particular project is, I personally think the technology around this is pretty simple. I think the hard part is the business process change that goes with it. HUD has to think differently, the programs have to think differently, and how they interact. And I should also say, once we're going to get all the grant agreements and put it into this data lake, and we'll compare all of the subrecipient stuff to the grant agreements to make sure that it's complying with how it's supposed to be spent. But the business process change around all that is not easy. We have to think differently within HUD. We have to have our grantees, public housing authorities think differently. We may have to have the subrecipients folks think differently. And then once we get the data, we got to make sure we're reacting in the appropriate way. And that's going to be very, very difficult. Once you have data, you can't overreact or underreact. until you understand what you have. And that's business process discipline that we're going to have to change at HUD. So I think the AI side of this and the technologies, the relatively simple part, and I'm trying to convince our people that the hard part is changing policies, procedures, not only within HUD, within our grantees, but AI is a phenomenal tool. I'm excited about it, and this will be very helpful to understand, where there is potential fraud, waste, and abuse within the flow of funds of taxpayer dollars.
Thanks, Irv. So I'm hearing from you, it's about accountability in a very decentralized system, right? And we can come back to those challenges because I'd like to touch on change management at some point, but thanks for that. Rick, I'm going to turn to you, and I know you have your own unique perspective with where we are with AI and financial services as well.
Yeah, so hopefully that's picking up. Is it picking up okay? Yeah. The opportunities, Irv just mentioned some of the things from a HUD. We work with FHA a lot, and so certainly are looking for, what might happen there. When I think really about the opportunities, I think we're not even scratching the surface yet with AI of what those opportunities might be in financial services. If you go back and think not so much the products that we might use, but the data capabilities that drive this, that what's behind it, are there new pieces of information that might allow us to better predict whether someone can make their payments on a home or not, right? Or on a loan. There's such a vast amount of information out there. We're still running off of models. Some of them, the original stuff is, 30 years old with things like Desktop Underwriter and those type of tools that we use within our industry to help make the recommendations on, whether we should make a loan or not. There's much more data out there around rental payments, around people's utility payments, all kinds of data that we really are just scratching the surface on. And so what might that do to open up affordability, to open up maybe someone traditionally might not have a lot of credit data, and could the additional data, the new data, be used in some way to facilitate, what it is that, being able to make a loan or not? We really don't know it really is early when I think about this. But I think, we a lot of times focus on something like a Chat GPT or Copilot in Microsoft or those kinds of things. But it's the data processing to me behind all of this that's really going to open up a lot of opportunities as we look to the future. When I think about the challenges, because you had mentioned that also, and I'll go back to what was said in the opening remarks, we have, any company typically has one technology platform. We don't have one for each state, right? We might use Azure or AWS or whatever is our server farms or our cloud providers and whatever. We don't have one for every state. So it's really hard if every state comes up with a law or regulation on what we can do and how we can do it. If you want to govern, hey, you should be able to opt out of AI, for example. Well, our data is sitting on a server. That consumer's data is sitting on a server somewhere. It's hard to opt out when we want to protect that data that's sitting on a server using AI. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to deal with here, and I think part of it is we're all still learning, what it is that AI is about. We still have more fears, I think, generally as a society, perhaps about it, rather than the ability to look at the opportunities that it might have, and think about, wait a minute, let's not have sweeping laws or regulations that don't really pay attention to the actual nuance in practice.
Thanks, Rick. Oh, I'm going to switch to this if I can. Can you all hear me? Great. Okay. Rick, great, thank you. So what I'm hearing from you is a federal framework is best, and that's NBA's position, I believe, right? Okay.
It's our position. It's also just mine personally. But this is before AI, right? If I think back, tech company has one tech platform. Pre or post AI doesn't really matter. So when you think about regulating tech, we need to be thinking about it differently than certain things that say maybe, okay, don't do adjustable rate mortgages in a state. Okay, we may disagree, agree about whether that makes sense or not. But I could actually program for that. What I can't do is have a different tech platform for every state. I think that's the difference.
Can I pull the thread just a little bit on the opting out piece? Because I think we've talked about this just a little bit, and I've always said, from a business standpoint, I've never been a fan of consumers opting out of a technology. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I'll use the example we have. So some of the proposed legislation out there in states would be if a consumer comes and wants to do business with you, give them the opportunity to opt out of the technology. Well, that kind of becomes pretty hard, or some of it, an original thing, or initial drafts have said, well, hey, you can't use AI with this consumer, right? I've opted out of it. It's virtually impossible if I am protecting their data and other consumers' data in my systems using AI as a defensive mechanism, right? Well, how do I do this if the law was written that the consumer could opt out of the use of AI? I can't solve for that in a technological world. And that's the kind of things that it just makes it very hard.
It's food for thought. Steve, you wanna get in here and talk a little privacy?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you for. Oh, thank you.
Gotcha.
Yes, I'm so thrilled to be here, NAIA's General Counsel. And I'm trying to help unscramble this mess we have in America about data management writ large. GDPR really kind of got it right. Once rules that applied to all then 28 member states, and after UK, now 27 member states. And, GDPR, people don't realize that 23 years earlier, they passed an EU directive, and EU directives have to be passed by the individual states. GDPR was an attempt to eliminate all of the unique rules that each member state would pass under the directive. We need one common set of rules. Well, that's exactly where we are in America. And ChatGPT has driven this awareness of AI, but data privacy and the rights to data control don't go away. They're not superseded, they're not replaced. And so data privacy rules govern the collection and use of personal information, which is such a broad definition to mean about anything. It picks up cookies and browser history, anything that can be used to identify a natural person. So it's extremely broad, and all these rules trying to kind of give users and consumers control of their data and the use of their data. It's very important, and I think America's completely bought in, and it's a sound policy. But when AI has come along, people think it's a whole different regime. No, it's just one other element of data management. It controls the potential use of machine processing of any kind of data that could have a risk to consumers and their activities and financial devices and healthcare, et cetera. So if you put personal information into an AI model, you trigger both regimes. So my role here at NAIA is trying to help Congress come up with a preemptive statute. Trump's executive order calls for it. I think it was the best part of it. We've got to get to one common set of rules because there's so much more we need to do. And I want to speak, the one other thing I want to speak to, not now, but Europe has a financial services statute. I want to touch on that in a second, but thrilled to be here and really appreciate your participation.
Thanks so much, Steve. Well, folks, we have a distinguished panelist that has just joined us. I'm introducing Congressman Marlin Stutzman, representing Indiana's 3rd District and serving on House Financial Services. And the Congressman has a unique perspective, being both a policymaker and a 4th-generation entrepreneur. And I'm so glad you could join us. I think you had business on the floor, if I'm right.
Yeah, committee, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here. Panelists are just talking about, from their unique vantage point, and yours is certainly that as a legislature. What are our opportunities now with AI, and what are our challenges?
Well, first of all, great to be here and appreciate the invitation. But, I grew up on a farm in northern Indiana. And so if I would have had AI able to drive my tractor back then, it would have been a great thing. But had to stay awake. But AI is exciting. There's so much potential and opportunity. And of course, there's a lot of discussion around it, and we often fear the unknown and not always sure exactly what it means for us. But I think as we continue to progress and things come into focus, we really start to find ways that AI is going to be a huge tool for all of us. I've got a couple of boys in college, and they're already figuring out ways to use AI. And I said, as long as the teacher approves, that's fine. But there's obviously going to be also downsides to it, and that it's a powerful technology where it could be abused as well. And so that's where we come into place with policy. There's also the big race of who is the most advanced and who is really, I don't want to say controlling it, but has the best infrastructure and the best ability to use AI as far as when it comes to geopolitics. And one of the beliefs that many of us have here in Congress is that the United States, greatest country in the world, needs to be out in front leading for a variety of reasons. One, for the benefit to not, to the American people and to our allies and to our interests, but also that it's not used as a tool against us. And I believe that the folks that understand and believe that we should have safeguards in place for the betterment of humanity and for protection of people's rights and their ability to do good things in the world really does come down to us being that play that role where we are helping to put those guidelines in place. And so, a lot of focus here in Congress is on China for a variety of reasons, and this is one of those in particular, of course, other countries as well, this race in AI, but also I think it's important that, we can utilize it to the advancement of our own economy and, new, more innovative practices and also projects and products that can be developed with the use of AI. So obviously very exciting. It's going to affect different jobs in throughout the country in a variety of ways. But I think, if we would have said, no to the gasoline combustion engine back at the turn of the century in the early 1900s, or said no to the internet, think of all the things that we would have missed out on. And that's where AI is really that tool can help advance our country and society and humanity to new and better things.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I'm hearing you say this is an exciting tool, but there are bigger things at play too to consider with policy. Thank you. So when our CEO gave his opening remarks, Caleb Max talked about responsibility. Again, how exciting technology is, but the responsibility. Let's talk about AI and how it's shaping trust and risk in the financial services, government services space. And how do we get this right? And I'm going to open this up to the panel and anybody that wants to jump in here. Congressman, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll let them.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
From HUD standpoint and putting in the subrecipient database, how do we get it right is a great question. First is understanding what we're trying to accomplish. And even before that, kind of to your point of jobs changing, you got to demystify it with the folks that are trying to implement. You don't want them to be afraid of it. They are. They're going to hear it. Their jobs are getting eliminated. And our message at HUD is we're not looking to eliminate jobs. We're looking to make your jobs more interesting, as opposed to pushing numbers around and reading complex grant agreements and trying to look at compliance. AI can do that. And what AI is going to do is identify, the ineffectiveness, potential issues more quickly, and then your job gets fun where you start to address that. But I think getting people bought into it initially is just what is AI? And it's a technology, but what can it do? And just demystifying it in their own minds and how they can then start thinking about what they can do with their jobs to make it more fun, more enjoyable. And I've promised our folks we're not about job elimination right now because we don't do a great job of compliance and oversight. And this subrecipient database we're setting up has created a lot of excitement with our team because we will have a lot of information that we don't have now, and it's going to be a tremendous amount of insight and an evaluation of what is going wrong out there once our grantees and public housing authorities get the money. So demystifying what it can do, promise them you're not looking to eliminate your job. You're trying to. Now, I'm not saying that's not going to happen in the long term, but at least right now, through this transition, we need these people to help us because they have the history. We'll use the private sector to put the technology in place, and we'll also work together to do the business process change that has to happen with this. That's going to take several years, and that's not going to happen overnight. And we got to educate our grantees, our public housing authorities, of what this change means to them. So there is plenty of opportunities, and I keep going back to the point. This is not about technology. This is about business process change through the whole supply chain on the flow of funds. And that's the message that we're giving. And AI is a tool to help us do that efficiently and more effectively.
So good old-fashioned change management.
Change management is a huge part of this, exactly.
You talk about really, I think what it is. I joke, but the book several years ago, Who Moved My Cheese, right? That's true in everything. It's not just AI. It's any time you're changing a process. The folks struggle with it. I struggle with it, right? Someone wants to move my cheese. I'm like, wait a minute, that's my cheese. And so you get that. So we're in this, who moved my cheese, the FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. This is the stage we're in. For many people, they're not seeing anything yet, right? Right? They're thinking, well, I saw Terminator, and so that's AI, and right? And it's a way a lot of folks are seeing the world, or they'll see one incident where a Waymo in Texas or something stops on a corner and blocks something. Look, that's true. How many, of us or someone in our family has maybe not a great driver and blocked a truck or whatever in our lives? It's a lot more often, right? And so we're sort of in that stage where, because of that uncertainty and the fear phase, every time anything wrong happens, it gets amplified rather than all the right things. My wife, we talk, she's not the most confident driver ever, and we talk about things like that. She is really looking forward to when the technology, frankly, can do more. She just got a new car about a year ago. She's very happy, right, that it has the lane change, right, and whatnot, and the automatic stopping and all of those things, because it makes her a bit more confident. I think that's the world, right, that we are looking for. But we're transitioning through a lot of this doubt or uncertainty, and we're going to be transitioning for a while longer, because AI is, or the generative, right, the new stuff, it is in its infancy. We really don't know what we're going to be capable of with that, but I think it's going to be doing a lot more for us than we really can realize.
Steve, what about you? Would you like to add anything?
Well, I just want to pick up on where compliance and innovation really come into tension. Think about this. These areas of the machine processing of data, if it touches or affects education, employment or job opportunities, healthcare, financial services, public benefits, or judicial fairness, Europe calls those high-risk decisions. Colorado calls them consequential decisions. California calls them significant decisions. They unload a vast, granular compliance regime that must be in place before you introduce the system. So we've got to find a way to help our companies achieve the benefits that AI promises or looks like it's going to do, but it's going to have to operate here for a while, and we just need to kind of sort through the compliance regimes and not take 8 broad segments of the economy and say, if machine processing of data touches these, then you got to do all these things before you can even introduce it. So it's just extremely complicated. It's going to take time and effort. And I think there's much of these issues, data privacy guardrails, protecting children, that we can agree upon. It's the mere fact that there are 23 different state rules enforcing 23 interpretations of a separate statute. We fix that. It doesn't much matter what the individual elements are, because we get to one rule and businesses can operate and predict and price their services. So that's my hope and idea. We're trying real hard to let's get to one set of rules.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking of as the gentlemen were talking about a year ago, Eric Schmidt came in and spoke to a group of us about AI. And two things that I thought were really interesting that he touched on is he said that we have to make sure that we increase the energy supply in the country to be sure that we can power AI and the data centers that go along with it. But the one thing that I thought was most important is he said that there has to be a human finger on it. There has to be that human element to it that we can't, he said it could run away from us. He said, but we have to have that human finger a part of the operations of AI. And, just like AI will very likely and has been used for fraud and scams and things like that, we can also use AI to be that counter tool to the same bad activity that goes along with it. So I think the good outweighs the bad in much greater ways, but at the end of the day, we as human beings still need to have our finger on it.
So the human in the loop, that's the important thing that we all hear all the time, right? So as we go forward and AI becomes more embedded in financial services, do you all have thoughts on the roles of government, the role of regulators, the role of policymakers? Anything that you want to offer that you haven't yet?
Yeah, I think it's really important that the regulations embedded in law, like you were mentioning. One of the things that we're collecting data in a new way, and we're doing it through rules and regulations out of HUD. And we've got, the NOFAs, the Notice of Financial Opportunities, the grant agreements, and the CFR 200 over at the White House. We've got language in there to compel this. That could change with an administration. And one of the conversations I had with the authoritative committee was, could we put this in law so that can't happen? And, implementing this is not crazy expensive. The business process charge will be the hard part, and maybe that'll be expensive for individuals involved. But I think it's so important. I think once I don't know if it's 1%, 2%, or 3%, which sounds small, but when you're talking about $80 billion, it's not a small number, and this will repay for itself pretty quickly. So I'd hate to see this administration get this in place and then have it change in a future administration. That's why it's important, I think, to get it embedded into law like you were talking about.
I'd like to see a lot more collaboration as we look. I think there's the tendency to say something bad happened and we needed a law or a regulation to solve it. I've spent much of my last decade or plus on and off leading a standards organization within the mortgage industry. That kind of organization is open not just to participants in an industry, but regulators, examiners, right, state, federal, vendors, anybody can come together, right, to collaborate on standards. And there are certain things that you can solve for, right, if you address it through the use of standards rather than saying, hey, I need a law or a regulation. NIST has an incredibly robust AI framework for anybody who is interested in it. It's phenomenal. It's too robust for most companies. We're looking in our industry to have a mortgage profile that works for that. It's envisioned under that. That's a much more succinct type of framework that really goes to what you guys have all been talking about. How do you document what you're doing, how you're testing, how you're monitoring everything that you're doing? If we have a common framework, then everyone in our industry, no matter what thing they are using AI for, right, it's being documented in a consistent way. Regulators, lawmakers, anybody can actually opine and say, you need to have something different in here because I've got to worry, right? And so, we look forward to trying to have that kind of collaboration because I think it can, in certain areas, right, make it so you don't have to go to Congress and the congressman here and say, I need a law to prevent this bad outcome. Well, there's other ways sometimes to solve for that.
Let me interrupt the flow for just a second, John. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I'd love to ask each of you for your closing remarks and maybe, a piece of advice, like your one piece of advice you would give regulators, policymakers. And Steve, I'll start with you and I'll work down here and I'll give the congressman the last word if that's okay. Yeah.
Well, NAIA is working hard to try to come up with consensus, and we just really hope that we can pick up on the suggestion by the administration that we need a federal preemptive. So I think we can agree on a lot of these issues. We just need to decide that it needs to be done.
So I'll ditto, yes, a federal. A takeaway that I think is important, a lot of folks are being passive about AI. I think making sure that you start to use it, use Copilot if you have Microsoft, right? Use a free version, ChatGPT, use it in a controlled way, and your people inside your orgs can help. But I think part of, you talked about the teaching, the education, getting experience, getting exposure to it. AI is a great democratizer. It really is. I don't have to go to a tech person anymore to do something that I used to have to do. You got to start, though, with it, and it means everybody needs to start dabbling with it, because I think once you start to dabble with it, certain of your worries will go away. It may create others, but you'll be more educated and be in a better position, whether you're a policymaker, an industry veteran, or whatever it happens to be. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I do a lot of guest lecturing at universities, and I tell young students that the most successful way, the best way to be most successful is be a lifelong learner and be adaptable to change. AI is here, it's going to happen, and you can either lead it or you can adapt to the change, but if you don't do either one of those, you will be left out of the workforce down the road. And I put up a slide about 30 words that were important in the business world when I graduated in the early 80s. And I asked them what's unique about these words, and none of them existed in 1980, and they will not exist in 30 years from now. So AI is here. It's that if you're not adaptable to change, you will be left out. So make sure that I always tell my folks that I'm leading, and when I talk to young folks, keep yourself current and be adaptable to change. Lead it or be part of it, but don't ignore it.
Yeah, there's an exciting product, as we try to figure out how this all applies to all of us in our daily lives. But in my district in Northeast Indiana, there is a company that's actually manufacturing, using AI to monitor the water flow that goes into homes. And all of a sudden, if something, changes quickly, then it shuts off the water, and, suspecting that it could be a leak in the house or some sort of, burst, a pipe that bursts, especially after a cold winter like we've had. And so you think about that technology as that becomes more and more implemented, just that alone. I had a toilet run all night one night while I was at home sleeping, and had to have an insurance claim. So that sort of technology could affect insurance claims as well, just monitoring our houses in a variety of ways. So it's really exciting, and it's going to be very applicable to our daily lives. But finally, I think that from a policy standpoint, the world is so much smaller than it used to be. And I know, I'm a former state legislator, and we want to try to have an impact on policy, and it'd be quick and easy to, of course, file a bill in Indiana related to AI. And I'm sure there are some, and maybe for a good reason, but I think we need to try to keep them as uniform as possible from an interstate level, a federal level, rather than having a patchwork quilt, especially, states like California and Texas that are larger may want to try to touch this, but I really think we need to find uniform language that applies to our entire country. And then, of course, we're going to also be competing with other countries. So the more we're unified together on AI, I think the more effective we'll be.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been great to hear from you on privacy, on industry, on government funds, and certainly good policy. Will you all join?
That runs everything. And we're going to talk about the need for electricity and how we convert energy to artificial intelligence. What are the supply chains challenges, supply challenges, and how do we meet them? What are some of the consequences of not meeting our currently predicted electricity AI needs? And I think we're going to talk some about the national security implications as well. I'm sure there's some of you in the audience who are very interested in that. I doubt there's anyone in the audience who is not interested in the energy aspect of AI. And we're talking about, not just for AI, but we're talking about 30% increase in the need for electricity in the U.S. over the next 10, 20 years. That's, if you think about it just a minute, that's about 147 1,000 megawatt plants running 24/7, which of course they don't do. And to put that in perspective, 1,000 megawatts will power anywhere from 750 to 1 million homes, depending on the size. So let's start out and first by introducing the panel, and we'll go from my right to the end, and I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, and so I don't say anything they don't want to hear.
Hey, thanks very much. My name is Martin Holmes. I have been with the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence for the last 3 years. I'm a professional staff member there covering a bunch of emerging tech issues ranging from AI to microelectronics to cyber, technology competition with China. Thanks for your time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christine Wallace. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at a company called Everstar. We are actually in the unique position of most people talk about using nuclear energy to power AI. Well, we're using AI to accelerate nuclear deployment, so we have this sort of like self-sustaining loop. And before that, I was in the intelligence community. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm John Bell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Mission Technologies, a division of Huntington Ingalls. Basically, we're the guys that don't build ships. We do all the computer software and the mission-critical systems for DoD. So I'm here because I want to make that connection between AI and AI infrastructure and our energy grid and how our national defense really depends on all of these capabilities.
Great, thanks. I'm going to ask you all to get your microphones close to you because I know sitting out there sometimes it's hard to hear. I got a thumbs up from the peanut gallery back there. Let's start just talking about AI and somewhat generalities. I know that we had that from the other panel, but with the electricity, thoughts of electricity, everything we do that I know in the world depends on electricity, probably even sleeping, because we have to wake up with an alarm clock that either has a battery or something that's connected to electricity. So we're talking about turning electricity into artificial intelligence. Let's talk just a minute about the benefits of artificial intelligence, and not just that, you know, it's going to be able to monitor our toast and we won't burn our toast anymore, but the serious things, and for instance, the national security implications, and what other things we may be using electricity to benefit us.
Sure, I'll kick it off. Thanks very much for that question. I guess to kind of convey it, it's probably important to paint a bit of a picture as to the intelligence community's needs and use cases and value proposition for artificial intelligence. And for those of you all who don't know, because the IC, you know, sometimes makes the news in James Bond movies or whatnot, but ultimately we tend to be fairly quiet between CIA, NSA, NRO, NGA, all these weird three-letter organizations. Ultimately, our objective is to provide information, informed foreign intelligence to policymakers so that they can make decisions in the best interest of the United States. And that foreign intelligence gathering process feeds up to an analyst who at the end of the day needs to make sense of all kinds of wildly disparate pieces of information that can come in the form of trade data, diplomacy talks, military exchanges, military exercises, communications, or human intelligence. All of that creates a massive data problem where analysts are spending their time trying to make sense of what is the most critical foreign intelligence that our policymakers need to know to make decisions and react day to day. And that picking data, finding the right needle in a haystack is an activity that is very well suited for artificial intelligence, combing through big amounts of data. That's exactly where AI shines and where we, in our oversight of the intelligence community, want to make sure that the intel world is adopting, deploying, and utilizing AI to implement that mission. Obviously, the adoption and utilization is very dependent on having all of the infrastructure that serves that function. The no-kidding cranking out of AI information, which often is counted in terms of tokens, occurs with advanced graphic processing units, GPUs, that are fairly energy intensive. So we need a very reliable and expansive grid across the United States to support the compute, the GPUs that are being used to help us across the IC make sense of data and provide our policymakers with the best informed intelligence. I can go much deeper, but I think for there, I'll just stop and give my colleagues a chance to give some opening remarks.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, we're going to try and save time for a few questions if we can, if we don't blather on too much up here. Christine, why don't you talk a little bit about the same topics here, but you've got an interesting and varied background. It's been reported, I don't know if there's any truth in this, but it's been reported that the U.S. is not the only area or country, political entity working on AI. We're in a pretty serious race. Talk a little bit about the national security implications of the us versus them, and by us I mean by them I mean China primarily.
Sure. So the way I kind of think about this is through the lens of nuclear, because that's what we focus on 99% of our time. But it can be looked at in various different ways. Obviously, this administration and the administration before made AI a national security priority, and therefore we have to make energy security a priority as well. I think the way that we have historically regulated energy sectors and actually building any big infrastructure in this country, nuclear is a very extreme example of that. But as we've talked to different people in different sectors, whether that be data centers, whether that be traditional energy, on, manufacturing, if you want to build anything big in this country, you're going to have a permitting problem, right? So we're our own worst enemy in that regard. China's building 27 reactors right now. We've built 2 since 2000. And before that, it was crickets for a while. So our entire industry degraded over that period of time. And you might think, well, China's state-run, our government doesn't function the same way theirs does, they can do things we can't. True, but there are examples of other countries that function much more like ours, that have a much faster and safe, still, energy deployment cycle. South Korea, France, et cetera. Korea is actually a very good example. So I think about it in terms of if we want to win, one, we have to figure out what that looks like, and nobody actually knows. And 2, if we want to get there, and we should absolutely consider this wartime footing, because the war's already started, even though it's not conventional. We have to do things faster, and we have to not be afraid to take some manageable risks.
I think that Christine certainly makes a very good point, as I've said over and over and over again. A lot of people have said it. It's not unique to me. But AI, it's not a question of if. It's a question of who. And whoever gets the lead, whoever wins the AI race, and it is a race. It's probably in our lifetime the biggest race we'll face from a national security perspective, from an economic perspective, from just a quality of life perspective. But this is a race. So either we do it and we win, or China's going to do it. China is doing it, and they may win. Talk a little more about this.
Yeah, so thank you. How about that? So anybody who's been paying attention to the war in Ukraine is aware that drones have become an enormous game changer in warfare today. There's a lot of technology that goes into drone warfare, and it's evolving very rapidly. One of the things we know for sure, though, is that drones that are capable of autonomy, of doing things on their own, either with a man in the loop, controlling the drone explicitly, or a person on the loop who's monitoring and allowing decisions to be made, or full autonomy, where a drone simply has its marching orders, if you will, and knows how to do things smartly and responsibly. These are key technologies for us, and they are all built on AI. Without AI, we don't have true autonomy. Without true autonomy, our warfighters are at risk because they have to be the ones going in harm's way instead of these autonomous systems. We specialize in surface and underwater autonomous systems. We partner with many people that do aviation-based autonomous systems. All of this AI technology gets built originally by training large language models, by developing specialized algorithms. All of this stuff requires a lot of compute resources. Without those compute resources being available to us, we can't create smart autonomy. We can't create responsible autonomy. Without constantly evolving this technology, we can't keep pace with the competition. So we rely on data centers and the infrastructure that powers those data centers in a way that's a little bit different from the casual consumer or a business-to-business model. We rely on it as a critical national asset. But it goes beyond that. Once we've developed those algorithms, we have to install them and operate them at the edge, onboard weapon systems, onboard platform systems. All of those systems also need compute resources to run these advanced algorithms. So infrastructure for us goes beyond just the power grid and data centers. It goes to communication systems. It goes to how do we power these highly advanced compute systems in a way that is lightweight, low power, able to go on any system that we want to land it on. That's just one example of how we're using AI. Another example, you talked earlier, I think one of the panelists previously talked about detecting when there's a water leak in the house. We want to be able to use AI to detect well in advance if there's a problem on an aircraft carrier, if there's a problem on a ship with a particular mission-critical system, by simply monitoring lots and lots of data and putting all those pieces together in a way that nobody's been able to put together before to detect and predict maintenance problems, weapon system failures, targeting issues, all of that kind of stuff we want to put together into AI algorithms to monitor and manage the way we go to war. Finally, using AI to go to war is more than just powering systems, more than just powering weapons. It's all about the command and control and the intelligence. What is the information out there that we need to go to war intelligently? How do we comb through that mountain of information that's available to us but isn't all that easy to put together? How do we make smart decisions in real time when we are in harm's way with AI assisting us, not taking over, but assisting us and making our job easier, making our job more reliable, and helping us to make the right decision at the right time? That's all of the kind of things that we're looking at for AI to change our national defense. And as you mentioned, Bud, if we don't do it, we're in trouble because our competition is definitely doing it.
All right, let's, thanks for those comments, and let's shift just briefly. I mentioned initially that we're talking about 147,000 megawatt plants needing to be built to supply 30% increase, and that's running 24/7, which of course they don't do. So, but that's how much power we're going to need, predicted to need. We may need more, we may need less. Where are we going to get it? And what are the impediments? What are the, not just the impediments, but yeah, mostly the impediments to getting there? Go ahead, John.
Sure. I am not the energy expert, so I'm going to defer to my panelists to answer that, but I'll take a stab at like a related topic that is inherent to that question. And I think the demand for energy across this entire stack of AI is exponential, and it's only going to get way higher. Because when you look at the ultimate end state of producing information from artificial intelligence, that's producing a token. But how do you get to that token? Reversing in time, it starts with semiconductor manufacturing equipment at places like ASML in Europe, or Tokyo Electron in Japan, or US companies like Applied Materials or Lam or KLA. And at this bottom of the stack level, first of all, you actually need a very strong infrastructure base and supply chain base to build the semiconductor manufacturing equipment, which then is going to get installed into foundries around the world. And this is where we really have an advantage, because all of those semiconductor manufacturing components, the key ones across this global landscape, are US and our allies and partners in control of these companies. And you go up from the semiconductor manufacturing equipment to foundries. That's where you're getting to companies like TSMC, Intel Corporation, Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron. The best foundries in the world are US and our allies. And then what's rolling off that foundry line, which by the way, foundries are remarkably energy intensive. The CHIPS Act, which is phenomenal for helping to bring an onshore manufacturing to the United States, one of its challenges is actually getting through the permitting process. And if you're talking to TSMC, Samsung, Intel, you kind of know the struggles that occur there. But going above that foundry level, you're then producing from that foundry GPUs, and the best artificial intelligence accelerators are coming from NVIDIA, AMD, Cerebras, Grok, Sambanova, Google. These are all US companies again. And then those GPUs are being used to train frontier models. Those frontier models are again US, OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, XAI, Google. And then how are those frontier models being used by you and me and everyone around the world? It's hyperscalers. These again are once again US companies, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. So the US has this incredible advantage in that entirety of the AI stack is dominated by the United States. And it's entirely kind of up to us how we seize and utilize that advantage, or if we let it waste away. Part of seizing that advantage is looking at how we are outcompeting China and ensuring that this entire stack has the energy it needs to fully operate, and improving permitting across the United States to do so. The other part of it is slowing down China. But with that, I'll turn it over to energy experts.
Thanks. I think the EUVs take, what, a megawatt each, and then foundries have something like 20 of them, and then you have all the other equipment running, right? So semiconductors make my heart happy. That was my previous life. Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, we've seen repeated patterns across multiple industries, multiple sectors, multiple adjacent topics. Permitting is always a problem. regulatory issues plague everybody. And that's not just at the federal level, but state by state. If you're going to build something, anything, you have to deal with federal regulations, state regulations, local zoning, city councils. Like, it gets completely out of control very quickly. So that's problem number one. And that's really a manufactured, I will say, like constraint, right? Because it doesn't have to be that way. It just is right now, and people don't think that we can do anything about it. The next problem that is inevitably going to come up, which has started but hasn't really hit mainstream yet, is supply chain. Because for nuclear, if you remove the regulatory burden or greatly reduce the regulatory burden, which we are working on now with AI, because paperwork, LLMs, it really goes well together. If you reduce that regulatory burden, the next problem is going to become supply chain. So if you want to build 10 gigawatt class reactors like the administration put in the executive orders, where are you going to get the components? We don't make them here. And it's the same for other industries as well. I know that a lot of the defense industrial base has the same issue. And then the third issue that everybody runs into is workforce, and that's another area where AI can really help out. I think the average worker at a nuclear power plant in the US is something like 48 or 50 years old, if I remember correctly. Everybody's aging off, and that's not just nuclear, that's other industries as well. So, but AI can do knowledge capture, it can do training, it can do all of these things that make that transition to new workforce easier, and it can reduce the amount of workforce that you actually need to get the job done, so that people's jobs aren't getting lost necessarily, they're being transformed. And AI is more of an augmentation than a replacement, so.
Yeah, so what's preventing us from really adopting AI? I want to go back to the supply chain, because that's a really critical one. Chips, we know there's historical precedent. Chips can be tampered with in manufacturing. If our whole AI infrastructure is reliant on those chips, then the security of the manufacturing process and the security of those chips and circuits is paramount. But it goes beyond that. We are all aware of news events about software supply chain issues. It's remarkably easy, when you look at it, to tamper with software when we all depend on each other to build software components. When a lot of it is open sourced, you don't actually know who's building some of these software components that we depend upon. And the security of that software supply chain is really paramount for us as well. So that's, I think, one significant impediment we have that is a lot of times not really recognized front and center, so I wanted to bring that up. Going back to energy, I think transmission of energy is a big deal. We've got to get the energy where the data centers are. We've got to get the energy to the edge, where we have edge-based data centers. And that means we need more than transmission. We've got to have energy sources where we need that energy. We look at it from the perspective of a shipbuilder. We decided a long time ago, the Navy decided a long time ago, that it was a good idea to put nuclear power plants on our subs and our aircraft carriers, because we had no other way of meeting that energy demand that reliably and for that duration that we needed to put sailors and airmen in harm's way. So it's the same problem all over again. How do we get the energy where we need it, when we need it, and we've got to make sure that it's reliable. If we are in a time of crisis, in a time of conflict, our power grid is going to be very fragile, frankly, and we need to figure out how are we going to account for that.
Thanks, that's very helpful. Let's talk just briefly about, you mentioned transmission, and we all think transmission when we think about these issues. I am told, I've not talked directly to but one AI developer, not AI developer, I'm sorry, data center developer, who says that the utility, one of the utilities where they're working, says it's going to be 3, maybe 5 years before they can run a transmission line and give them the power that they need. So they are looking at, and I saw just two weeks ago about that one of the data center developers is starting with the anticipation that small modular reactors will be available in the very near future. And what they are doing is installing a gas generator that is just gas fueled, but the generation, it's the generator itself, the turbine and other elements of the generator are built to nuclear standards so that when SMRs are available, they can switch to an SMR as their fuel source. And if an SMR is never available, they still have gas. I think the reality is, because of the reliability you've discussed, it is critical to all these systems. You can't have on and off electricity. I think the only two real choices are natural gas and nuclear at the moment. So any thoughts on that at all? And then we're going to open for Q&A.
Well, I'm certainly not a nuclear expert. I'm a software guy. In fact, I've been developing software in AI for the last 30 or 40 years. But we are uniquely positioned as an operator of small modular reactors on ships and submarines. We've lit a lot of them off. We've operated a lot of them. I think there's a lot of lessons learned that can come from that as industry moves into that kind of an environment. I agree with you. That seems to be the most likely way that we can go in the future. That allows us to have energy at the point of need.
Just to add on to that a little bit, I mean, there's creative solutions to problems if you're willing to entertain the ideas. Transmission is a huge problem. So I mentioned South Korea earlier. South Korea, when they build reactors, they build them in at least pairs, if not threes, so that they can utilize the same transmission infrastructure that's already on site to be able to do that and get more use out of their existing transmission. Another thing people are talking a lot about is co-locating energy sources and data centers together. Nobody knows exactly how that's going to be regulated, so that's an interesting question. They fall under different regimes. But if you look at things like what XAI did in Memphis, setting up their Colossus data center, I mean, they literally just trucked in generators or turbines, but like power generators and cooling because they had to, right? Like the timeline was untenable for them. So, there's a lot of things, if you're willing to get really creative, that could be done. It's just a matter of doing it.
I guess I would say just very briefly that I think we really kind of need an all-of-the-above solution, which includes, yes, bringing on board nuclear as fast as possible, taking advantage of every energy source we can. The co-location of data centers with power generation is unique and promising. It's interesting to me that Amazon is trying to purchase 3 Mile Island. That's unique. And then beyond all of that, I also think you need more efficient AI models themselves that run with models and the GPUs behind those models just more efficient in the energy production, and potentially ultimately a different architecture of these AI models instead of LLMs and the transformer model, which can scale kind of linearly by throwing more compute and data and energy at it. I think there is an opportunity for more biology-inspired AI models with more advanced research and development, because your and my human brain's running off roughly 30 watts by some of these data centers that are scaled up to like 3 or 4 gigawatts.
Well, I'm getting the hook over here. I'm sorry, I'm getting the hook. I'll be around if can't take one. All right, one question. One question. This guy had his hand up first. Yeah.
One of the things that we're looking at closely is the alternative inference sources, like we talked about building a pre-build for running inference and GPUs and then decode for LPUs and TPUs.
So, sorry. Yeah, hello. So anyway, I'm Tom, I'll just go again. So I'm founder and CEO of an AI company. We build private AI OS software that handles a lot of the things that we talked about today. But as far as energy goes, I think there's a lot of opportunity to make inference a lot more efficient. I mean, right now we've been doing it probably the most expensive over GPUs. Looking at the new hybrid architectures like NVIDIA's acquihire of Grok LPU technology, that's extremely promising. And you've got a 10% or 90% power reduction. So that sort of new American innovation, which the Chinese do not have and will not have, right? How does that factor into your energy projections and things like the gentleman was saying about more efficient AI models? Because the way we're doing AI right now is probably the most inefficient, power-hungry way to do it. Have you guys got any projections that factor in some of this new American chip innovation and also potentially more efficient models too? So I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel. It's the short version. I really think we're doing things in the most inefficient way possible right now. So.
I generally agree with you. I think NVIDIA bought Grok for $20 billion for a reason, and it's because there are a lot of efficiencies that could be had, right? I think that ultimately, this landscape needs to drastically change. You're seeing a lot of innovations out there, and they need to come to scale, be adopted. That whole entire semiconductor fabric of Cerebras, Grok, Samba Nova, TPUs, like all of them are critical and they need to improve.
All right, I'm sorry, but we don't have time for any more follow-up. The Third Army has arrived and they're going to run us off stage. Let me just mention one thing. If you haven't seen it yesterday, Congressman from the 16th District of California, Jim Liccardo, I believe pronounces his name, has a great article. In the Wall Street Journal, very short on the op-ed page, and it's worth reading. He is very pro AI and says that all the problems that we're talking about can be solved on a bipartisan basis. And yes, that is a word, bipartisan. I had to look it up myself. So, but he swears it can be done. So take a look at that. Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next panel will be our National AI Framework panel, moderated by Farhan Chughtai, Chief Strategy Officer of NAIA. Our panelists will include the Honorable Bill Foster, U.S. Representative from Illinois' 11th District, Mr. Steve Lombardo, Chief Executive Officer of Adfero, Alex Worth, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of Quorum, and Mr. Austin Carson, Chief Executive Officer of Seed.ai.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the NAIA Policy Summit. We're really excited today to tackle what should be in a national framework on AI and how do we get there. On our panel today, we have Alex Worth, the CEO of Quorum. We have Austin Carson, the CEO of Seed.ai. We have the Honorable Congressman Foster, who sits
calling me honorable is one of the weirdest things about this job. Does that mean that when I leave Congress, I'm the formerly honorable Bill Foster? Anyway. Fine.
He currently serves on the bipartisan House Task Force on AI. And we have Steve Lombardo, the CEO of Adfero. So we're really excited. We're going to jump right in and for a national AI framework in 2026. And let's start with you, Congressman Foster.
Well, I think the first thing is that we have to make sure that the United States is a place where people want to come to do AI. All all right? And that is one of the things that, I'm hearing from industry players that a lot of our talent, we have 5% of the world population, so 95% of the geniuses are born offshore. And if we're doing our best to drive them away and make it impossible for them to come, or undesirable for them to come to work in AI, I think that's job one on this. The other thing is you have to be realistic about what Congress can actually pass. I think that it was very interesting, one of the reasons driving this big proclamation about the national policy was the 99-1 vote against, in the Senate, against the idea that you're going to prohibit the states from regulating AI. And there, I just want to point out there is a middle ground between having 50 states, each with their own individual regulations, which would be chaos, and having one national, one-size-fits-all, and zero ability for states to experiment. We actually have legislation in Leg Council right now to allow coalitions of states representing, say, 25% of the population pass identical laws and authorize that. So that what companies would be facing was not 50 different standards, but maybe 2 or 3 standards for operating in the United States, which would be tractable since most companies, large companies, are already facing 10 different standards in different areas of the world that they operate in. So I think that is, the middle ground that we should be working toward populating, because there's a huge advantage with allowing states to participate. I think another crucial thing that Congress can and should be doing is dealing with a secure digital identity. One of my hats I wear is I'm the lead Democrat on the banking subcommittee of the House Financial Services, and so I'll be the chairman if we have a good election in the next election. And so I worry a lot about what agentic AI is going to do to the financial system. It will destabilize it. We'll have bank runs that happen at the speed of AI, not at the speed of internet gossip, the way Silicon Valley Bank went down. And so that is a huge, it's a huge problem. It will also destabilizing a lot of industries. Every industry that depends on brand loyalty, for example, will find that that's blown up when everyone's using their AI personal agent. And because they'll just say, all right, I want the best price. They tell their personal financial assistant, get me the best price. And so brand loyalty will be a thing of the past. And so that that will blow up a lot of companies' business models that banks have large loans out to. So there's a lot of turbulence coming in the next decade, driven by AI, just in financial services alone.
So I'll just take it. So I sit on here with the view of the technology entrepreneur. I run a 330-person technology company focused on the political and government space. But we've got 100 engineers and product people that are all working on building AI technology. And so as I think about AI regulation, what we need on the entrepreneurial side is we need consistency, we need clarity, and we need simplicity. And the really perspective that I encourage, we don't have a full-time person that is out and monitoring and trying to keep us in compliance with different variety of laws. And we are also working very hard to come and advance AI solutions for our customers as rapidly and as quickly as possible. And the more different variations of that we have to introduce to stay in compliance with multiple different states just slows us down and holds us back from what we can deliver, and also puts us behind if there was someone that was not subject to those same rules or regulations or operating outside the United States, and makes it more difficult for what we are doing. And so would just very much urge coming back to that consistency, the simplicity, and the clarity, and keeping in mind, the smaller companies that are the heart of the innovation that the congressman talks about, and what we really need to succeed.
Yeah, and I'll tag on. And so I run a 501c3 nonprofit, and a big part of what we do is go to different states around the country and talk to them about what do they hope AI looks like for them, how do they want it to support their economic development, how do they want it to support the way that they currently experience and want to experience their lives and their kids' lives. And I think there's a big, and this is more, I think, conceptual than anything, but there's a big piece which is like, I think the American people need to feel like we cared, that the federal government cared, that the state government cares and understands that their lives are getting meaningfully disrupted. It makes it easy to engage in some way. So a big thing that we find is the more that people are able to actually have some facilitation in understanding how to use the tools for their betterment, and particularly for entrepreneurship or for things involving family life, the more that they feel optimistic about the future of the technology, and the more they feel like they are part of its construction and it's not something that's happening to them. So what that looks like in practice is things like, we go and talk to hundreds of people from the state of Utah to kind of understand, okay, if we're going to support your AI adoption in the state, what do you actually want that to look like? At the same time, I think to what Alex and Mr. Foster, you'll be the honorable forever if you're the chairman, because the chairman emeritus never ends. You know? But sorry, I had to. But I do think that the true challenge is understanding, hey, you know, the United States does have a great degree of commonalities, and our regulatory systems could be largely unified outside of some things that will, I think, remain in the state's purview. So it requires the hard work to accomplish the first part, and then it requires more hard work to make sure we get to the second part in a way that increases social cohesion and economic development.
So how do we balance these regulations with locking in standards that can become obsolete with this technology evolving so quickly?
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe I'll return to another thing that I think the federal government can do and have national standards for secure digital ID. This is something where the U.S. is risking falling behind the EU. By the end of this year, in the EU, every citizen of the EU will have the ability to prove they are a legally traceable citizen of the EU using their cell phone and the trusted electronics and the secure enclave of their cell phone and the biometric login. So all of that will be in place. Ironically, all of that technology and the standards there were developed at NIST by the U.S. government in the Obama administration, and we have been just letting them sit on the shelf except for maybe 20 states that have adopted digital driver's license, mobile ID. And so that, I actually have a Republican partner, Pete Sessions, who is, you know, pretty Republican guy by all accounts, and he's, we are proposing to just get some money to states to fast track the adoption of mobile driver's licenses, because that is the tool at hand to be able to prove you are who you say you are. If you want to authorize your agentic AI agent to go and do something on your behalf, the first step when my agent talks to your agent is, who the hell are you? And, you know, who and how do I know that you've authorized them? The only way to answer that is that, you know, sometime in the last 15 minutes, both of us have stared into our cell phone and smiled and done the biometric login, and that and used your cell phone to present the federally issued ID that proves you are a legally traceable person. And you can do that in a privacy-preserving way. That the standards developed at NIST allow you to say, here's the proof that I am over 18 and I'm a resident of Virginia, and I'm not going to tell you anything else. And those are built into the NIST standards, and it's sort of the best you can do to preserve privacy when you want to, I don't know, go access a porn website or whatever you want to do if you're over 18.
Glad to follow that. So I think two things. I think there's one, which is understanding, like, what do we actually need something bespoke for? You know, I think there's a very small number of questions around artificial intelligence where there will need to be an artificial intelligence specific part of that, especially something that might have non-technology neutral language. So, like, people can't be deceptive anyways. And so if we have to do something to make sure that in some way AI is not enabling a new type of deception, or we need to have some enforcement authority or something, that's one question. But we don't need to say deception with AI is a new thing, especially if you're using generative adversarial networks for XYZ, because that of course is going to be problematic. But I think what Congressman Foster here is saying about NIST is maybe one of the most operant parts, which is you have this cycle of standard setting processes that allow you to update what risk management looks like in that framework. Now that's not regulatory, and it in part shouldn't be regulatory because it is supposed to be flexible and change, but making sure that we have high engagement on that, and that we have a system with the federal government where folks feel comfortable, like we've had with kind of the Casey consortium, and I think we'll probably have the Genesis consortium to some extent. It will certainly be helpful to come in and share information with the federal government, with those folks, and also feel like they can contribute to the answers and outcomes.
I'll just take a step back and just talk a little bit about how the technology works, and realize there's a couple of experts here in the room, but I think it's important to understand how to think about regulating it. And that is, as we all are well aware, we have a series of model makers, your OpenAIs, your Googles, your Anthropics of the world that are producing these large language models. And most technology companies out there are connecting into those large language models via API or using what's called a RAG approach, retrieval augmented generation, where we're taking text, content, actions, putting it in, asking for the model's view, and then coming and getting that back out. So when we think about regulation, the question is, okay, are we regulating the model makers themselves, who I think in many places you'd say objectively have a large amount of safeguards and are working to make sure that the models are safe? Or are you regulating how the different entrepreneurs and companies and tech individuals out there are using those models? And I think that's one of the biggest things, is it's not as if, we're out here all each developing out our own model. But the place where it gets a little interesting is that there is the ability to come and download your own model of an open weight model. You could also call it an open source model, either from the likes of Amazon, or more concerningly, there's a large number of Chinese ones out there. And then there's the open question of, well, how can you use that? And can you use that for more evil purposes like chemical or biological weapons, or cybersecurity breaches, or impersonating politicians? And so what I would just putting on the hat as a U.S. citizen is, okay, where are the things that we all as Americans say, hey, this is something that is not okay, that is now much more easy to do because of access to this technology, and focus the regulatory efforts on those areas where they're the biggest area for concern, but also realize that in regulating, you can go after those slices of the technology much differently and do it in a way that has a much more minimal impact on the innovation and entrepreneurship that happens.
My focus is on sort of public opinion and public perceptions, and a lot of the things that we're talking about today can only happen, I think, if voters are going along with you. And right now, like Caleb's opening remarks had a dozen or so ways that AI is helping improve people's lives. I would venture to say that 80% of America does not know about that and understand that. And when you have that type of gap between understanding, you creates a trust deficit. And that's the biggest thing that we have to kind of focus on, as well as the policy aspects. People don't understand this right now. Fox News had a poll that came out last week that said that 6 in 10 Americans were worried that AI was moving too fast. 65% of the voters that they polled said that they thought that AI was more negative than positive. So I think some of these things need to be bridged, as well as the public policy parts of it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. A lot of the complaints we're hearing about AI data centers, I believe, are sort of referred pain, if you understand the medical analog, that people are really worried about, AI and what their kids are going to have as jobs. And that comes out as complaints against the local proposal for a data center. The whole power issue, I think, is really a non-issue, because the high end of the power usage projected by these data centers is maybe 5% of all 7% of all our electricity. We waste 25 or 30% of electricity with old, inefficient air conditioners and crappy insulation on buildings. And there are low technology ways to capture all the power they need by energy improvements. I think it's actually an opportunity for the big AI data center people to actually say, okay, we're building this data center, but we're going to hold your electric rates harmless by reducing the power consumption on the grid interconnect that we're going on. And so there are opportunities like that to get the 5% or maybe 7% additional electricity.
Thank you. With the regulations on AI, it's so complicated because it hits so many different sectors. As you mentioned, the infrastructure, the energy. And so in addition to that, we now have this conversation regarding preemption. We believe at NAIA that there should be a national AI framework. But now with states like Colorado and California and Congressman Foster, your state of Illinois, have all enacted AI legislation. What is the balance of having federal standards, but also having state experimentation?
Well, I guess I presented already my best idea on it, which is to have a coalition model where large groups of states would be allowed to propose identical language, and then everyone would deal with that. I think there's also there's a federal floor. If there are things like that everyone can agree at, like no kiddie porn delivered to kids, things like that you can have a federal agreed upon standard. But there'll be a lot of gray areas and a lot of experimentation, I think, that will help. By states will try something, find it's very destructive to business, or another thing, and find it is actually very well accepted. The other thing is the standards setting. One of the big focuses of the White House is to get U.S. standards to be adopted, all right? And that is very much at risk because of, the attitudes that are being generated around the world toward anything U.S. right now. It's a huge problem, and that people will, I think it's only the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, that really has a international reputation that is trusted around the world. And so one of the things I would like to see NIST doing is convene everyone to talk about this and to set the standards for agentic communication. A lot of what has been talked about here is agent-to-agent communication. A lot of it's like the Anthropic Model Context Protocol, where you're basically saying, it's like you have a worker for you and you say, here's what's in my brain and please follow my thoughts. That is not at all what you do in a business negotiation. In a business negotiation, the last thing you do is let your counterparty, say, okay, here's my thoughts. You keep it secret, but you want a language to describe legally binding certainty. And that is something where the U.S. could really take a lead by standardizing on that part of the conversation. So when my agent starts talking to your agent, the first thing that happens is they do the equivalent of scroll down and hit I accept with legally well-defined terms for everything in that long agreement.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it comes back to this question of buy-in. We work with a number of conservative states, and whenever the preemption executive order or the preemption language for NDAA came out, I think the NTIA language, nobody was too concerned, and they thought it was kind of weird, because they're like, I don't know, nobody's going to change anything for like 1/50th of $500 million. But as a general matter, there's deep concern there, because it's not... often there is a game in some meaningful way for politics, or for any type of politician. Mr. Foster, every now and again you play games, I assume, sometimes? Every now and again?
I would never admit to that.
Okay, good. See, it's good.
For me,
this is a good politician.
Science. Well, you see, I'm Congress's pet chip designer. I'm very proud of the fact that every one of the 10 chips that I've designed worked the first time. I started programming neural networks back in the 1990s when we were smashing protons and antiprotons together to make particles that haven't been around since the Big Bang. So that's where I come from on this. And I got to say, a lot of political maneuvering doesn't seem very scientific to me.
See, I told you he doesn't play games. But I do think there's a very real thing for people. It's not like, states are like, no, it's a political game that people care about their kids. It's a political game that parents are actively concerned about the content that confronts them and their job options in the future, right? So having those conversations, and it's one thing I liked about the final EO draft, is it explicitly calls for, hey, we need to get together this working group of states to at least put forward something that we think could have buy-in, because if you don't get the buy-in, we're going into I think people refer to AI as the new electricity or the new fire, but we're effectively talking about an undercurrent layer of all interaction with each other in digital spaces in some form or another, especially in agent-to-agent communications, intermediating a lot of things. And even beyond that, it's like all of the semantics of it are going to, again, be very wide-reaching and wide-cutting. So people don't think that they have input and say on it, and you're going to run into deeply problematic things. And even people that in theory would agree with you on a regulatory concept will be opposed to you because, again, they weren't part of the discussion.
Just want to talk in practice here again, wearing the entrepreneur hat of what this looks like. So if you have 50 different standards, and that means we roll out a new feature and we operate across all 50 states, we literally have to have a different set of code, a different fork of the code, and are reviewing every state one by one for, is this feature compliant, not compliant. So we come and try and introduce something new, and it might work in 5 states, but then the 6th state it breaks, and then we have to change it, and that's running a different code base. And then we come and bring it on to the 7th state, and it makes it a little bit different. And then let's just say we want to take it and move it to V2. Well, what code base are we working from? Are we working from one state, the other state, and we try and redo a new state? And this is just how you get tangled in absolute knots when you imagine doing it at a scale of 30 states, 40 states, 50 states. And so that's where as much consistency as we can have across all the states, the faster innovation will be able to move, and the better it will be for small and medium-sized businesses and those up-and-coming technology companies that are trying to take this technology and improve people's lives with it.
Yeah, and I'll tag on one thing, which is I think one of the most useful things we could do right now would be to understand what are the highest leverage or the highest impact regulations on the process you're describing. What type of regulation would make you have to have 50 forks of the code versus 2 versus 4, and how many people does that apply? We often carve out people that have less than 500 million users or something. There's normally some type of small business carve out on this regulation. is that a rational break even? You know, I don't know. Are all really like regulations created evenly? I don't know. But these are where getting folks together and having conversations across industry would be really helpful.
You know, and this begs the question of the need for an AI framework. We have so many companies out there that aren't the largest LLM models, that are starting AI companies with, you know, people in their basement, and there's 3 or 4 people that are doing this, and the cost of trying to, you know, comply with all of these fragmented states is a burden for a lot of these small businesses that are normal people that have started to use AI in different ways. That takes me to the next point, which is, you know, the EO calls out the FTC and the FCC and all of these regulatory agencies to look into AI and state conflicts of laws. Do you guys believe that that AI should regulate it by sector approach, or is a creation of a new AI agency necessary?
I mean, we just should understand for what reason we would want a new AI agency, if for any purpose. Like, I think there are likely research components or certain decisions to be made that would be relevant, but for the vast majority of cases, a sector by sector or existing regulatory approach probably makes sense.
Yeah, and this problem goes all the way up through Congress. You know, when we were, you know, if you look at why we have not passed a privacy bill, you know, to do a real privacy bill or a real AI bill or even a real digital identity bill, which is sort of the fundamental level, it has to go through 7 different congressional committees. Okay, and this is the problem. You know, the committee structure of Congress is sort of a snapshot of our economy from 100 years ago. You know, the AI has just passed financial services as a fraction of the GDP. All right, and it's going to pass healthcare and become the single largest one in short order if it hasn't already. And so the problem is that we have, you know, if you look at agriculture, which used to be 70% of GDP, where at the time of the founding fathers, it was 70% of GDP was subsistence agriculture. It's now down, I think, under 1% of GDP is farming. Okay, and yet, from a congressional point of view, the Ag Committee has all of the good office space. Okay, just to let you understand this in congressional terms. And so what we really ought to do is join the rest of the world and have one full standing committee on information technology, and then that's where the one place that you go. And that's going to involve removing jurisdiction from a bunch of very, very territorial committee chairs. My best thoughts on how you do that is you say, we are going to do that effective a few years from now. So that you'd actually, you know, you're not arguing about next session of Congress. You're allowing people to plan their careers, and you say, okay, you stay on energy and commerce for a few more terms of Congress, and your seniority on this subcommittee will map onto the final IT committee. And so I think that that's one of the things on my to-do list for Congress is to just restructure the whole committee structure. Well, the committee structure specifically, and the committee jurisdictions.
You know, to piggyback on that, the same poll that I referenced earlier, a vast majority had little or no confidence that the federal government could adequately regulate or come up with a framework for AI. So it's the people are already worried that, you know, that the government can't do it.
It will be a banner day whenever the American people think Congress can do anything. I cannot remember the last time there was a poll where, like, maybe your congressman is 30 or 40%, but Congress is 8%. I'm like, that is a very unsurprising finding to me.
But one of the reasons I'm not worried about democracy in America is that politics at the local level is working well and people know it. It's just the farther you get from home, the less confidence there is. And so our challenge is to try to make sure that the lessons you learned when you were a mayor or a businessman or whatever it was, that you don't forget those lessons when you go to Washington and learn it's all about power games and caucus politics and all this sort of stuff that occupies way too much of our brain space.
Just, I think, coming back to this AI agency question, the thing that I would encourage, whatever it is how can it be done with speed? We're talking about a world here of congressional committees where, you know, to really have it be feasible might be years off. Today, you can download a Chinese model, whether it be DeepSeek or something else, that is close to as powerful as your Anthropics or ChatGPTs or Geminis of the world, and train it to do whatever, you know, gnarly, bad thing you could ever imagine it being. Like, there are bad actors out there today that have these capabilities and these pieces. And so when we think about about this. It is what are all the things I think everyone in this room would agree on of saying, hey, that is a bad thing. Like, there are very clear, easy pieces that I think we all as Americans would say, yep, we agree that's a bad thing. And so the thing that I would encourage is, like, how do you start by taking at least some of the baby steps of stopping the things that are presently possible today, the immediate risks, and then this is something that we are going to have to continue to evaluate, update the regulatory framework as it gets more and more advanced. But it is changing so quickly that we can't measure this in a period of years. It's got to be measured and regulated in a period of months.
All right, I got to do this because you keep coming up with open source Chinese models. Okay, the most important thing, I will strongly and I will stand and die on this hill, is that the United States creates better open source models. If we try to ban open source models or something, we're going to end up with like everybody on 4chan training their own model in a distributed way, because people aren't using them like because they're Chinese, they're using them because they're performant. Right, and there's a more performant American model, then we would not have to worry about, like, if you ask it, is the CCP good? It's like, yeah, that's a crazy question. Of course it's good, you know? So, and the second thing is, if you're gonna try to ban open source models or something like that, you're gonna have to monitor the entirety of internet traffic in some way, right? Because it's too big of a thing. So I would recommend being careful with that, but as a prerogative, the United States should push for have us be the dominant player in open source models.
And just pulling on this, I think the question here is, it comes back to, all right, murder is a crime, but are guns, allowed, not allowed, good or not bad? And so coming back to this, not necessarily proposing that we are banning open source and open weight models, because there's a whole series of very productive uses for them if you can't get your ChatGPTs or Anthropics into the way that you would hope for them. But in how you use any of these models, like, is it okay to use a model to create a chemical or biological weapon? Is it okay to do an impersonation of a politician? I mean, these are the things that are possible now and today, and that there's no framework around how people are using AI around it. So that's what I would put forward of, from this American citizen perspective, that there's just low-hanging fruit here that we would all agree upon, but that we've got bad actors out there that we need to be thoughtful about and have regulations around.
All right, I'm gonna close by asking Mr. Foster a question. Is it currently legal to make biological weapons in the United States?
Well, the legality isn't the question. The question is how easy it is. And, I had a rather distressing briefing from a non-for-profit organization that had done some work jailbreaking every one of the popular models and asking it, can you tell me, I'm a 15-year-old kid with, a few $1,000s of stolen Bitcoin, and I want to go and make a bioweapon, and it will give you detailed instructions on that. Okay, and that is true of the open source Chinese models as well. So that cat is out of the bag. The other thing we have to face is that if you're trying to prevent, say, people developing nerve agents, the workflow for a nerve agent is exactly like developing a new drug. In a new drug, you look and scan through compounds, you look for the ones that are the least toxic. And some brainwave a few years ago published a paper that says, oh, that's interesting, let's flip the sign of that objective function. Let's look for compounds which are the most toxic. And it proceeded to invent most of the known big nerve agents and some potential new candidates. And so this tells you, this is a very powerful technology. It's often compared to nuclear, and the difference with nuclear, you can tell from a satellite if there's a chance that there's a nuclear weapon being built somewhere. You need these big centrifuge halls with big power connections to the grid and so on, so you can see that. You cannot tell if there's one depressed graduate student with his desktop gene synthesis machine deciding he or she are going to resurrect smallpox, for which the genome is already out there. You don't need AI to design that. And so this is a big problem, and one of the difficulty is that the level of surveillance and intrusiveness that you will need from government if you want to change is going to be enormous. And that's a tough one. There's another scary thing on the horizon, which is the business of confidential compute. I don't know if you've heard this. It's one of the big new features that's advertised by NVIDIA and others. It's been around for a while. And the idea is that you can go and give a cloud operator a big encrypted blob of data and big encrypted blob of code and say, do this calculation for me and give me back an encrypted answer. And that the data center, since the data is encrypted whenever it's off the chip, they have no way of knowing what the calculation you're actually doing is. All right. And now, of course, all of the crypto crowd has said, oh, what a great opportunity. We're going to have digital contracts and provide you to buy this confidential compute using, you're going on the dark web, you form a digital contract to do a computation where no one can know who it is, and we will not know the identities of those doing it. And so that's scary because that's exactly the tool that a North Korean bioweapon designer needs. All they need to take is their enormous stash of stolen Bitcoin, and now they can buy state-of-the-art computing with no one knowing it's happening. And so that confidential computing is another thing that I think that is a control point that I think we ought to keep our eye on and probably constrict.
Thank you, Congressman Foster. I think we're out of time. I really appreciate everybody contributing to this panel. Please, a round of applause for everybody. Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next panel on cybersecurity and privacy will be moderated by Eileen Vidrine, NAIA Advisory Board member and former CAIO of the Air Force. Panelists will include Dr. Lauren Wind, Acting Deputy CTO, CISA, Ryan McKinney, Director of Government Relations at Quantinuum, Marissa Serafino, Technology Associate, HK Law, Phil Fuster, Vice President of Government Sales, SpyCloud, Bryan Stewart, Senior Research Engineer at Blue Sky Innovators Incorporated, and Nick Polk, Deputy Federal Chief Information Security Officer and Branch Director for Federal Cyber Office of Management and Budget.
So thank everybody for coming out in the cold weather today and braving the storm to get here. I want to jump right into it because we have such an amazing group of government and industry leaders. So first we're going to do round robin, just quickly introduce yourself and what your role is. And Nick, I'm going to make you go first because Nick and I used to work together. So thank you, Nick. I'm going to volunteer you to do this. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Yeah, so as Eileen mentioned, we did used to work together. I'm part of the Office of Management and Budget, Office of the Federal Chief Information Officer. So my purview is over the cybersecurity policy for the civilian agencies and part of the DOW. And then just really quick framing. So OMB does a lot of things. We do the budget, that's the other side. And we also work on privacy policy, which is another office next to us, which we work closely with. So privacy and cyber defense obviously often go hand in hand. And then our office under the Federal Chief Information Officer is also responsible for AI policy for the civilian agencies.
Ryan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan McKinney. I'm the Director of Government Relations at a company called Quantinuum. We're a spin-out from Honeywell, and we're the world's largest pure-play quantum computing company. We're very grateful to Caleb and the team for including quantum under the NAIA umbrella. And before quantum, I was a cybersecurity and privacy attorney. Great to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Serafino. I am a current privacy and cyber attorney at Holland Knight. Also do some government relations and help clients think through some of the AI governance, privacy, and cybersecurity issues we're going to talk through today.
Hi, everyone. My name is, can you hear me? Is this better? Hello. My name is Dr. Lauren Wind. I'm the acting deputy CTO of CISA. And we're really excited to be here to talk to you all about cybersecurity and infrastructure security and policy. CISA's bigger mission, right, is protecting and identifying the risk for cybersecurity and physical security infrastructure across the agency and also across our partners. We partner with the FSAB and also private industry as well. So really excited to be here and talk about the innovation that we're seeing from both the mission side of CISA and also the mission enabling functions from what we do in the IT shop of CISA.
My name is Phil Fooster. I'm the Vice President of Government Markets at SpyCloud. We harvest the dark web for all the information that's been breached so that we can defend our customer base, the government, and help law enforcement as well with things like human trafficking, fraud, and abuse, et cetera. I've been working in the technology industry for the last 40 years, helping government from this side.
Hi, my name's Bryan Stewart. I work for Blue Sky Innovators. I'm a senior researcher there that helps support, deliver innovative AI technologies to meet national security needs, but also our commercial customers as well.
So thanks, team. I like to say AI is a team sport, so I'm hoping that we can make this conversational so that we can really accomplish as much, because I probably have 2 hours of questions and 35 minutes to get done. So I'm going to jump right in. And Nick, I'm going to volunteer you to do the first question. Okay, thank you for volunteering. Where do today's AI systems challenge our existing privacy frameworks?
Thanks, Eileen. And so first, really quickly, if you have not already, they have these like really good chocolate chip cookies in the outer room with some like candy cane in them. So if you want to go and get one, no objections here. But really great to be here today. And great to talk about some of the work we're doing with the cyber defense in this new age of AI we find ourselves in. So for us in the cyber world, I would argue there really is a lot of stuff that looks really familiar right now and some stuff that's new, and to explain that more. So we've had, arguably AI in offensive, cyber for nefarious purposes for a very long time. So folks might remember for a couple years ago, probably about 10 now, we had things like script kiddies, Metasploit come out, which are essentially just free applications that you can download that will go through a whole bunch of different pre-programmed exploits to try to get yourself into a system. And, of course, if those are free, we can assume that our adversaries have more advanced versions and that they can integrate some additional tooling using, current LLMs to try to make those a little more customized for the different environments they're trying to get into. So from that perspective, really, this is well worn. And of course, we see increasing instances of using more advanced AI to analyze open source repositories on things like GitHub, try to find vulnerabilities there, because of course, we all think we don't have any open source software in our environment until we look at the bill of materials for some of the commercial software we buy and realize it's everywhere. So that's of course an option that adversaries have that we're seeing some more of as well. So treaded ground on that end of things. From the cyber defense, it's of course a little bit harder, and that's really where we are focusing now. So there's a lot of noise in AI for cyber defense. I don't think that you can find any cyber tool today that does not advertise themselves as having AI-enabled capabilities, but really what we are interested in is using AI to analyze the huge amounts of data that we get across the U.S. government networks every day, talking in many cases in the terabytes, and identify anomalous activity that we might not have realized was happening. This is something that keeps us all up at night, that there's some new attack vector that we haven't thought of using a zero-day or an entrance point that is a blind spot for us. And we've seen it happen a couple times over the past couple years, SolarWinds being a key example, when a supply chain attack that we all knew was kind of possible, but nobody knew could be done in that scale, really took the world by storm. So we're looking at that kind of capability. In addition, there is, of course, a workforce angle here as well to defend data, and that is that every agency, every private company that has a cyber defense program that's really operational has, of course, a room of people who look at event monitoring in real time, what's happening across the networks, similar to a security guard looking at a security camera feed for, a building complex. and identifying quickly when there might be something that needs investigation so that you can either stop what could be an ongoing attack or kick up some indicators look odd so they can be analyzed more closely and potentially stop it that way as well is really important. And that's really how we give our workforce the tools they need to be more advanced at their jobs. And that's both in terms of removing some of the very rote, boring work from these folks so they can do some more interesting, in-depth analysis with the time they have while they're watching these screens, but also giving the opportunity for folks that may not have the requisite skill set to do things that may be more advanced than we could do before. And I'll finish by saying, really when it comes down to privacy specifically, the biggest thing that we see from the cyber defensive side is the necessity for both AI and zero trust implementation for data tagging. The first step is to know where data is in an agency network, in a corporate network, and have a machine-readable manner to tag and identify that data, because otherwise there's really no way to ensure, with the millions of transactions happening across an agency network every minute of every day, to ensure that you are properly safeguarding that data. And so right now, of course, the U.S. government is very cautious, and so we, do tend to keep that data separated because, it's much easier to identify a database as having PII and maybe section that off from the rest of your network. But really moving forward, it's really critical that we continue to have that assurance, but we also have more granular data tagging so we can know exactly where the data is and give the right people the right access at the right time.
So, Phil, I saw you nod your head multiple times. Industry perspective.
I come from the world of OSINT, and when you look at the amount of data we collect, we're at about 1 trillion digital assets that we've collected so far. So AI introduces a really complex issue for us because privacy frameworks really govern your data collection and your data storage. When you introduce AI, you're processing all that data and you're inferring a lot of data. And what can then happen is you can teach that LLM private data, and that can then be stored in a very different way. So it creates challenges where you have to teach that LLM and that AI the differences of what is private and what is not. So those things are very challenging when you're building your models. We are constantly challenged by that because we're taking back breach data and data coming from malware. So it's very important that we're protecting all that data. And when we analyze that and use it to protect, users, if you're ever, asked to reset a password, generally that's because we've told a company, whether it's your phone or a web browser that you might get a notification from, that's coming from us. But there's a lot of other data that comes back as well that we're analyzing to elevate security, for example, at your bank. Those types of things have to be siloed very carefully inside of an LLM.
Yes, ma'am. Marissa?
I'm going to take a bit of a different tack, but along the same lines. When sort of Gen AI came out and we saw, at least internally at large corporations, where was the responsibility living within that organization? Granted, it is a broader approach, of course, but it often fell with the privacy teams to kind of come up to speed on AI and sort of manage it for the organization. And of course, AI has a much broader remit in terms of what needs to be managed there. But I think the point is that the existing privacy laws, particularly at the state level, 20 states have laws, and then the existing cybersecurity laws all still apply to AI, regardless of whether it is perfectly suited or not. And some of the things, Phil mentioned sort of the inferencing piece, which we see in a couple of laws, particularly around sensitive data. But there's a few other things that I think are sort of not quite, tailored to an AI landscape. One of them is, that you need to know what data you're collecting, right? Which can be a challenge, particularly if you are sort of ingesting that data, feeding a model, and then inferences come up, or however else, you're trying to sort of create that chain, that data chain. And the other piece is the de-identification challenges, which will persist. So I think as Congress is thinking about these things, those are things that I would think about in terms of, are we providing the right flexibility to be able to continue to innovate on the AI side, but making sure that we're also balancing that with the protection that we need on the privacy and security sides.
Marissa, that's a great point. So I'm going to pivot right to the next question. I'm going to give this to Dr. Laura Wind. How should technology leaders prioritize investment in AI security versus innovation? How do we get the balance right?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? And so what I'd implore you all to think about, whether you're agency, federal, or you're private, right? And we're thinking about policy, what is the enterprise strategy you're working towards in technology, right? And so from CISA and from our perspective, AI is the cornerstone of our enterprise strategy going forward, right? Technology strategy. We focus on, my 4 priorities this year are data governance, AI governance, application telemetry, understanding who's in the apps, what are they doing, and then metrics across the board, like our compute usage. But to tell you all that and give you some insight is that it's the cornerstone. So what you have to do is think about, you're not going to have one versus the other. You need to invest in your security and in your policy to start before you have this really awesome model or tool that your analyst brought to you or that a business is going to sell you, and you are getting these great results, but like my fellow panelists have already said, you don't know where that data is coming from, right? Has it been secured? And so one of the other things I'd say here, right, if you start with the perspective of security first, you can start to embed in your AI models, right, your policy as code and your security as code. So right then, it already has the guardrails, right? And some of the things you're talking about too, Marissa, is what type of data. But we're getting so good with our models, right? And at CISA especially, we're able to ping what data is being used. And if something's not supposed to be used, it flags, right? And we can already set up with those policy and security as code. You're monitoring it from the beginning, right? So it's not an afterthought. So when it comes to that investment, I think the other thing is, what's your risk tolerance? Whether, again, you're on the federal side or the private side. It might take a lot of money to invest in security up front, but it only takes one breach, right? It only takes one bad actor to ruin years of innovation. So that's what I'd leave you all here from the CISA perspective, and then if anyone else has something to add.
So I will tell you, as a retired Chief Data and AI Officer, my work BFF was my Chief Information Security Officer. If they're not on speed dial, it's going to be challenging. So Bryan, I'm going to ask you, you're coming from the industry perspective, specifically an innovation-focused company. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So I think innovation and security are kind of yin and yang. So I think to really have sustained innovation, security drives that. So as the point was just made, you can't really have one without the other. So a breach, your innovation, no matter how innovative it may be, it's not trustworthy, or the market won't pay for it. So now your innovation is not really worth it anymore. So the idea of, if you're going to do innovation, regardless of whether it's in AI or other, if you don't take a security first mindset at the beginning, you basically have a ceiling for where your innovation can go.
And I'm definitely going to ask Ryan, because you're the quantum person, everybody's talking about quantum. How do you put that filter on that question?
That's a hard one. So first off, I'm not going to explain quantum computing because one, I'm not smart enough, and two, selfishly, I'd like you all to stay awake. But quantum computing related to privacy is going to be a game changer completely. The entire public key infrastructure that most of our data is protected by at some point, and we're not going to talk timelines, but at some point in the not distant future will be broken by what we call a fault-tolerant quantum computer. So obviously that is terrifying in many ways, but the mitigations do exist. I'd like to echo what Representative Foster said in the previous panel about NIST as the preeminent standards body in the world. NIST has been on this issue for a decade, and NIST has already released and standardized what they call post-quantum cryptography to protect our data from future quantum attacks. And so that is when you're thinking about privacy and cybersecurity, when you're thinking about zero trust, when you're thinking about AI security, you need to think quantum because this is going to be a potentially decades-long process to move towards this post-quantum cryptography. It will not be easy. I think it will show a lot of other vulnerabilities in your cryptographic stack. And so when you think about, as some of the folks have said earlier, when you think about privacy as code and regulation as code, building that in, making sure that that is quantum proof from the start is going to be absolutely key. And that's not even to mention from a policy standpoint. Obviously, the U.S. And our allies truly believe quantum computing will be revolutionary, not just because of the national security issues related to cryptography, but because of a wide variety of issues related to pharmaceuticals, material science, logistics, optimization. There is so many amazing quantum use cases, but you cannot overlook the quantum cybersecurity piece as well.
So I'm going to pivot right back to my government leaders and ask, we heard the word governance a couple of times here, so I'm going to say, what governance models best align with AI deployment with cybersecurity and privacy obligations? I don't know who wants to, Nick, do you want to go first, or Lauren? Awesome. See, great teamwork. Thank you.
Any microphones. Hopefully you all can hear me. One way to think about governance, and my background's in data governance first, right? And like I said on the first question, we have to be better with our data governance, is to think about new AI governance models need to be agile enough for new attack surfaces, right? When it comes from cybersecurity, a lot of our endpoints has been physical, right? You can go find that network, you can go find the computer, you can turn it on, you can turn it off. But now we're looking at APIs, right? How do you start to secure something that is moving, right? Or something that is not on your infrastructure, right? What if the attack agent is coming in through the API, which we all learned about when that happened to Anthropic in November, right? And so when we think about governance models, we have to balance the evolving changes in cybersecurity and privacy risk and our tolerance there aligned with the governance and policy alignment that is coming out. And it's going to change, right? I don't think anything that's released today is going to stay exactly like written in stone for tomorrow as we learn of new technologies and new capabilities that are coming out. So from my perspective, we have to increase the threat modeling and monitoring on that side and also be okay with adaptive security protocols for governance. And of course, I could sit up here and say we need zero trust. You'll probably hear that a lot in this panel, continuously monitoring and auditing your models, your data. We can talk about our mandates that are out there, right? A lot of the new EO mandates that have come out. But the biggest thing is to harmonize, and what I do at the CTO shop within CISA is looking at the policies that are coming out, the executive orders that are coming out, and then what are those external regulatory frameworks, like you mentioned, NIST, right, and industry standards. And not one size is going to fit all one. So that's my first one, be agile and start with the ones that we know of, and then be okay to pivot when we find new technology or new security risks.
And you took the fun side of the equation, so I'll take the compliance and existing governance side. So my boss, the Federal Chief Information Officer, has been laser focused on accelerating modern technology into government, which includes a lot of AI capabilities, many of the ones we've seen through the GSA OneGov deals. And so really a lot of that is working through the existing FedRAMP process, which is how the U.S. government assesses different cloud capabilities before they are deployed in agencies. And, of course, that FedRAMP process is the same for an LLM that it is for another SaaS application or an IaaS application that an agency is onboarding. And so many of the same controls do apply, but of course, there are additional things that agencies and the private sector needs to consider, which you touched on very well. I would say the other thing, though, is that a lot of the same accountability, governance, and risk assessment mechanisms do still apply. So mainly, of course, there is a lot of rapid technology transformation going on across government in the recent months, and this really has just emphasized the necessity first to ensure that the governance structures are in place, the accountability mechanisms are in place, and that, of course, it's not just the chief privacy officer, the chief AI officer, the chief information security officer who is responsible and accountable for securing the tech stack. It is all the way up from the operator of that specific application to the mission owner and the, many times in the agencies you have different component heads. The accountability is important, the responsibility is important, ensuring that that's clearly defined. And then also, of course, speaking about these different capabilities, using the same risk language we use for other things to ensure that we are appropriately racking and stacking them across the different capabilities that we operate. So understanding what level of risk is being accepted and working that into the continuous process that we do to authorize things to operate on the network. And I'll just finally say, of course, as you very well mentioned, these are rapidly evolving technologies, and that really, for the government, emphasizes the necessity of this continuous authorization process, not just a set it and forget it posture. That was really great when you were buying a database and it would just sit there on a great on-prem rack-mounted server in the basement of a federal building, and nobody touched it, and it was just operating like that for the next 20 years. But as these technologies continue to evolve, it's really critical for agencies to continuously, again, assess whether or not the security that they have on paper as existing still exists in that capability, and take the necessary steps. And most importantly, to finish the thought, that does not necessarily, nor should it, slow down the process of getting new technology into government. Really, if you do that correctly, that'll actually speed up the process in the long run and in the near term as well.
I love that speed of relevancy. So how about my industry partners here? Phil? I know you have something to say, and probably Ryan too.
No, I just wanted to double tap on the Anthropic point. Knowing your supply chain is so important. And CMMC is a great compliance tool out there today, but it's a checklist, and it's got to be more than a checklist. You have to live it, and it's got to be something that is constantly implemented inside of organizations. You've got to really know who's in your supply chain, and I think a lot of folks don't know that. We've been working on some adversarial outside-in views for our customer base, and it's really interesting to see what applications, what tools are running inside your environment that they didn't even know about. So really knowing what applications are running, what APIs are in play inside of your applications are so important. I think that's very key. And applying those tools into AI and running them at the speed of, speed of light is very important. Being able to check that in real time is key.
Brian?
Just real quick, I think it'll be important, at least from us, being someone that has to go through the assessments for these information systems, whether commercial or for national security reasons. I think this should be considered as an overlay, not something new, not a new silo. This should be part of the RMF, it should be the zero trust, the privacy assessment. So this should be just part of, let's add it on. Either if you have AI learning systems, you have this new overlay, just like we do some other aspects of data that are inside our information system. So I think that's the point that I would stress the most when whatever we use to assess these learning systems, I think the important thing is treat it as an overlay to how we currently do our risk management, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about risk management, not trying to create something new here. It's just my point.
And that reinforces what Marissa said earlier. Like it's part of how you do business. So we hear speed of mission, speed of relevancy, got to be agile, all things that we've heard, but actually doing it is challenging. So I'm going to go back to my government people and ask one more, I'm going to say challenging, hopefully, question. Maybe if you can answer this. How real is the risk of AI systems becoming tools for large-scale cyber attacks? Like, can you be honest with us in terms of where you feel comfortable?
Very real. I'll just go ahead and start here. We've hit on it, right? Anthropic showed us that it's not even a cyber attack by a human anymore. It's a cyber attack by an agent. So are we prepared enough, and is our posture prepared enough to find those agents or find those AI before it attacks, right? It was very interesting. I was on a different panel this morning. It must be an AI day. Every day in my life is an AI day, though. And they said right now the average cyber attack by an agent is 38 seconds to get in and out with your information. Are we ready? So it is very real. And then I think I wrote down in my notes here, you can be ready, right? It's that security first posture and understanding how you're starting to monitor those new endpoints. Like we said before, API is not on your infrastructure. From a CIO or a CISA perspective, you probably weren't monitoring that in the past. But with new automated SOCs out there, what we're starting to do with network logs and tracking from a cybersecurity perspective is we can start to understand how those agents are operating and be on the defense, right, from the beginning instead of the offense, right? How can we start to get into a proactive position instead of reactive? So that's my perspective from CISA.
Yeah, so I completely agree, not just because if I happen to say that it could never happen, like we would have an attack like 3 minutes later with my luck, but all excellent points, and I would just add a couple of things. So first, I am duty-bound as a cyber policy person to also mention that part of our portfolio is post-quantum cryptography, part of it is defense against advanced AI capabilities, but of course a big part of it is also just like the very low-level cyber hygiene. And so all the time I have agencies come up to me like, oh my God, there's a quantum computer, it's coming tomorrow, and we need to, we're not prepared. And I'm like, yeah, but you also are running like this edge device that has never been patched, and a high schooler can get into that and compromise your network without using any of these new things. It's super easy for them. And so the base level of cyber hygiene is still important. That is still, of course, the main attack vector that we see across all the different agencies. And a lot of the steps we're taking, CISA very recently released a binding operational directive on out-of-date edge devices in the agencies. That is going to reduce the attack surface substantially for both current attacks just based on known vulnerabilities and potential future ones, because of course once something is end of life, the manufacturer is not looking for these new vulnerabilities that potentially an AI-enabled capability could find. But I'll just finish by saying that one thing that we see as a very big constant ever since there was the cybers is that if there is a capability that our adversaries could use to increase their capacity to both in terms of quantity and quality launch different types of cyber attacks, whether it's exploiting for future gain or for very near-term results, they will use that capability. And so we, of course, can only assume that, whatever we see on the white hat side, that it will be also being used on the black hat side. And so, again, there is the basic cyber hygiene, but there is also the big investment for the future, which is, again, looking at the zero trust implementation for the agencies, ensuring that things like ports are being monitored, they're being closed in a dynamic fashion. You're not just leaving these things open for an AI agent to be able to get in and then find a really easy exfil or infill point for that system. So all those things are things that the agencies are doing on a daily basis to prepare for the eventuality for increasingly sophisticated AI-enabled cyber exploits and then attacks.
Okay, so now I'm going to call an audible because I know they're going to give me the sign very soon. So I'm going to pivot right back to Ryan and go back to what will the advent of advanced quantum computing mean for cybersecurity, and what policy levers do we need help on?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the risk is that public key encryption will be broken at some point in the not-so-distant future. You can see timelines that range from 2 or 3 years all the way to 15 to 20 years. While that is not known, I will say that from the industry side, we are continuously hitting our benchmarks on our roadmaps, and we are hurtling towards real commercial quantum computers that can do things that no classical computer can do. And I think with the support of a lot of federal government programs like Project Genesis, which I think is the perfect tie-in today of AI plus quantum at the federal level across the national labs, plus state funding, quantum is moving forward. And this is positive, again, for national security. It's positive for economic security, but it also means that this Q-Day, the day at which cryptography will be broken, is coming faster. And so that means from a policy lever, we need to continue to push, again, for things like the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act. We need to promote Project Genesis, promote what's being done at the national labs, but we've got to play the cyber piece as well. And so the federal government has been instituting these NIST standards for a while now. In 2022, there was what was called the Quantum Cybersecurity Preparedness Act. President Biden signed an executive order about quantum readiness. President Trump signed an executive order about quantum readiness. The private sector is falling behind. Again, this is a potentially decades-long transition, and whether this is policy, whether these are incentives, whether this flows down contractually, as it's already doing with government contractors, we've got to push the private sector towards these NIST algorithms sooner rather than later. I think a big piece of this is honestly going to be driven by the insurance community, such that you cannot get cyber insurance across the board unless you show that you have started this process towards being quantum safe. And also not thinking of this, we've talked about silos. Do not think of quantum as a silo. Don't think of AI as a silo. Think of this as we are protecting our organization, whether that's a private company, government agency, from attacks old and new. And to the point that was just made, cyber hygiene is still absolutely paramount, and when you are updating your cryptography to be quantum safe, you're also going to find vulnerabilities that are just normal cyber hygiene, and so you're going to be able to fix all of these things as you're moving to protect yourself throughout the future.
So they just gave me the sign, so I want to thank all of the people on the panel. This was amazing. When we have break, please continue the conversation, because I think, coming from my career, cybersecurity is a foundational component, and AI is a team sport, and the security team has to be absolutely co-leading the team with the AI leaders. So thank you. Thank you, folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin a 20-minute intermission. Policy and pass it. And so we are seeking to do that, but from the voice of companies and innovators. And so without further ado, I want to introduce the AI Collective, and they can come up on stage if they're here. The AI Collective, give us some background, is a nonprofit grassroots community of 150,000 members worldwide, including founders, researchers, innovators exploring AI's frontier. Their founder, Chappie Assel, who, by the way, is a bodybuilder, and you'll see his LinkedIn photo is not just an AI photo of him having muscles. They're real in life. I couldn't say the same thing about my LinkedIn photo. I'm kidding. And his colleague, Catherine, who works at the AI Collective for being amazing partners in today's event. So Chappie is a co-founder and executive director, a serial entrepreneur, and a former Apple and Meta AR and VR, AI, and ML engineer who started the organization in 2023 with small gatherings in San Francisco. He's passionate about building the social infrastructure. There he is.
social infrastructure for humanity's most important conversations about AI. He also works as a venture scout for Moderna Venture Group, a venture fellow for SUSE Ventures, and as an advisor for the CEO to Rome and various other AI collectives. So there's Chappie. And I'll quickly introduce Catherine. Catherine is the founding director and operations of AI Collective. Catherine is a community leader, strategist, and convener focused on shaping the social and civic infrastructure around AI. She leads one of the world's largest grassroots AI communities, the AI Collective, and bringing together policy makers, technologists, creatives, and organizers to ensure AI is developed with trust, openness, and human flourishing at the center. Previously, she worked across partnerships and media and ecosystem strategy and emerging tech and management consulting. Without further ado, the AI Collective.
Sure. Thing works. Oh, hey, we got it. Thank you all so much for joining us at our inaugural AI on the Hill demo night with the AI Collective. This is by far the largest event that we've ever hosted in the DMV, and I'm just really grateful that all of you are all here today to join us. A show of hands. Has anyone in the audience attended an AI Collective event before? Show of hands. Love to see it. Thank you. And assuming everyone else, this is your first time, welcome. So today would have not been possible without all of the phenomenal team members, so I wanted to just quickly show all of our wonderful team members in the DMV that have come out specifically here today, including some people from New York and San Francisco. So thank you. Let's give a round of applause to all of the people that made it happen today. And now I'm going to pass it over to Chappie to give more details about what is the AI Collective for all of you who are first joiners, and to bring us back to the beginning of where this all started. Chappie, over to you.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Am I allowed to stand up? Is that okay if I stand up? Okay, awesome. I've actually never sat down to kick off an event before. A little background is the AI Collective is a small grassroots community that we started back in early 2023. This is right after the whole ChatGPT boom, right? Everybody in SF is trying to figure out what the heck is this technology, what is going on. It's evolving so quickly on a week-by-week basis. So we started to just get together our founder, researcher, engineer friends around a little round table to talk about what's going on every single week. By the third event, we had 250 plus people signing up to join this little living room discussion and decided to turn this into an ongoing series. We ended up hosting 50 events that first year, quickly turned into the most passionate, largest AI community in San Francisco. And over the last couple of years, it's really expanded all over the world, where you now see we have 150,000 members across 30 plus countries and 100 global chapters. Next slide, please. Or do you have next slide? Got it. So some obligatory social proof. We have members from just about every major AI company. We've been fortunate enough to partner with just about every other major AI company as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so why does the AI Collective exist? Why has it become the largest AI community in the span of under 3 years all over the world? I like to talk about the age of acceleration. This is a really cool graph which shows the average IQ of an AI model back in December of 2024, and then we have December of 2025. If you look at the frontier, yes, some things go all the way over there. I would say the average frontier model is about 85 IQ. A little over a year ago, it's now about 115 IQ. So in the span of 1 year, AI went from, let's say, 15th percentile human to 85th percentile human. This is human progress over time. I like to say that we are at the elbow of the curve right now, and AI really is, in so many ways, the frontier of technology, the frontier of human progress. This might make less sense to you than it does to when I give this talk to our community in SF. These are all of the different ways that you can code with AI now. None of this existed 3 years ago today. When I'm in SF, I would like to say, show of hands if you use at least half of these, and half the hands would go up. We have so many people who are playing around with all these new technologies coming out every single day. Some of these have come out like literally in the past week or two. Next slide. Okay, so I like to call people who attend our events pioneers on the frontier. I talked about AI being the frontier of human progress. If you are at this event, you are one of those 1%, top 1% people who's thinking about this technology, hopefully experiencing this technology, playing around with it every single day. Okay, so our purpose here tonight, and we read this out at every single one of our events all around the world. We host something like 1,000 events per year now around the world, is to create common ground to learn faster, meet the right people, and tap into a global ecosystem that applies to every event. I know this sounds a little corny, but this is another thing we read out before every single one of our events is our community values. I believe so much that the value you get out of coming to an event like this or any event around the world is the mindset you come into it with. So really quickly, I won't actually read through the entire thing, is connection, positive sun, curiosity, belonging. You can read more about that on our website on the slide there as well. So demo night tonight, right? What is the backstory of demo nights? We started hosting these in, I want to say it was early 2024 in SF. We have thousands of founders as part of our community, companies blossoming all the time, coming out, becoming the next billion-dollar companies that you see all over the headlines now. We would just bring together 10 of the top companies to show off in front of an audience much like this in San Francisco. Over the course of the past 2 years, it's really become the flagship event that we host in San Francisco, the flagship demo night in San Francisco that happens on a routine basis. And next slide. Over the past year or two, we've been expanding this to more and more cities around the world. So these are just some of the cities in the United States. We also host these all over the world. We've probably done 50 to 100 now demo nights. But this is the first one in DC. So I'm the first to welcome you to. Can I get a round of applause for AI on the Hill demo night? So excited to finally be doing this here. This has been probably 6+ months in the work to get it to this point. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are going to enter the demo arena. Catherine is going to be emceeing the demo arena. We're gonna have 9 companies, 9 startups demoing their products across 3 minutes. Next slide, please. There's the Demo Night app. Now, what is the Demo Night app? One more, next slide. So this is actually a fully interactive experience. If I could all get you to pull out your phones and scan this QR code here, this is gonna pull up a little web app here, and every single company that's demoing tonight, you have the opportunity to leave feedback for. You're gonna see this screen. You can remain completely anonymous if you like. If you wanna give really harsh feedback, you are more than welcome to. You can also leave your name, email, LinkedIn, whatever you want, if you want the demoist to follow up with you after. Next slide. Let me walk you through really quickly what this is gonna look like on your phone when companies are demoing. Oh yes, make sure you click the update profile once you put in the info you want. Next slide. So when companies are actually demoing, this is what you're gonna see. You're gonna have what company is demoing. You can go click to visit their website. You're gonna have these smiley faces, which you can leave a 1 through 5 smiley review. That remains completely anonymous, even if you put your name in, so be brutally honest with your feedback. You can leave whatever questions you have, your favorite part of the demo, free text right there. If you click that little info button, next slide. You'll see all the different buttons you could see down there. You can do virtual claps if you don't want to clap in real life. You can also say, I want to test the product, work with you, learn about investing, or sign up for the email list. Next slide, please. Okay, after we go through the 9 companies that are demoing tonight, you're gonna have the opportunity to vote. Yes, you in the audience are voting for 3 different awards tonight. We'll go through that in just a second. Once we have finished the voting section, we're gonna announce the results. You're gonna see that pop up on your phone. And then after the event, one last slide, you're gonna be able to see who the award winners are, follow up with all the companies. Yes, their contact info is there. If there's really somebody you wanna talk to, you are more than welcome to do so. Next slide. One last thing is if for whatever reason you happen to lose it on your phone or you decide to pull up the Demo Night app later, you can just go to demos.aicollective.com, or if you just go to our website, aicollective.com, you'll see a little banner at the top. Highly encourage you to do this. It is extremely valuable for all the companies here tonight. Again, we've had multiple companies turn into billion-dollar companies from these events, so it's a great opportunity to also get to talk to top AI companies. Next slide. This app is entirely open source as well. If you would like to contribute to this app, which is used all around the world, there's the open source repo here. You'll see me and a bunch of other people contributing to it. Next slide. Okay, that is the demo night arena. Quickly, the 3 awards we're voting for, one more, next slide, and then I think I'm passing it over to you. Yes, oh, but you can also just go to aicollective.com and you'll find it there. But yes, there's the QR code. Hopefully you can scan that. I know we're kind of far away. Got it? Nice. Okay, next slide. Okay, award voting. What are the 3 awards that we are voting for tonight? So when you're watching the 9 companies, keep in mind what is...
Next slide, hold on.
There we go.
Most impactful. So the demo that inspired you the most with its impact and scope. Best technology, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then best overall, which is kind of like the MVP of the startups. So keep these 3 in mind as you're giving feedback and you're watching the presentations today. I think I can control this here. There we go. Without further ado, we're gonna get started with the demos. So how this is gonna work, each startup is going to get 3 minutes to demo their product on the stage. We are going to keep them to the 3 minutes, so I might interject with time cues as we reach the last 30 seconds. So our panelists, not panelists, our demoists will go.
Might be them loading up the first one.
Okay, so why don't we get Miss Ariana from FutureFit AI to get us started. Chappie, you and I will switch places here.
Well, I can hand off the mic.
Yeah, hand off the mic, and I'll pass this over to you now to take the lead.
I can just walk off stage. I'm just walk off stage.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, here we go.
A moment for technical difficulties.
I feel like I can cheat and start doing my 3 minutes now. Get a couple extra.
Wait.
I won't.
How are we doing back there? Oh no. That's okay. Well, if you didn't get the QR code, demos.aicollective.com. Maybe it's a bandwidth issue because everyone is going on to the CVC Wi-Fi at the same time. So I see a thumbs up in the back. I think let there be Wi-Fi. Okay. So while we're waiting, first up we have Ariana from FutureFit AI. Ariana is the head of product there. Actually hasn't even started the job yet, but is here demoing the product live today. And they are bringing AI-powered career navigation and workforce development to the masses.
Indeed.
All right.
And I can't wait to show it to you.
Will we be able to show it? You? Do you want to?
I can talk about FutureFit.
All right, let's give her a round of applause. No slides.
Yeah.
All right. Your 3 minutes.
I'll get the award for least visual presentation.
All right,
That's
your
the
3
one I would
minutes
like.
start right now.
So at FutureFit, we see that AI is one of the major disruptors in the labor market right now. Great, okay. AI is one of the major disruptors in the labor market right now, and in the middle of disruption is the best time to design a better system using those same tools to get people, more people, better jobs, faster and cheaper than we have been to date. And we need to do this because upward mobility is increasingly a maze for people in this country. People's jobs and occupations and livelihoods are eroding out from under their feet as the white-collar labor market tightens. Meanwhile, there are plenty of job opportunities in industries that are the backbone of our economy: HVAC, healthcare, building the data centers that power the same AI technology that we're talking about. We have fabulous people in our government, higher education institutions, employers trying to solve this problem. So the talent is there, the jobs are there, there is support there, but it is disconnected and in silos. And that problem of silos is a great problem for AI to solve, because AI can connect disparate systems and make sense of a ton of text and data in order to make it more interpretable, actionable, and personal for those people who are looking for jobs. So what I'm about to show you is to focus on two parts of a job seeker's experience with FutureFit AI to show you the power of what AI as a tool in the system can do to get faster outcomes for people that are more personalized. All right. There is a video. And man. Can someone in the back click it for me? Thank you. Buffering. I'm just gonna start talking about it and trust my friends in the back to get it working out. Okay, so what FutureFit has built is part one, a natural language processing engine that takes an individual's resume when they upload it and turns it into a compass for their future career. We do this with the help of AI by extracting that text data and mapping it to a skills ontology with over 20,000 skills across 800 occupations. That helps a job seeker see how their skills in their current job, which might be not as in demand as other jobs, how those map into a skills graph that then points them directly to where there are in-demand jobs in their local area with higher wages. We do this with humans in the loop. The individual job seeker gets the opportunity to edit and provide feedback on the information we're presenting back to them so they are still in control of their journey. Part two, use the power of your imaginations. All right.
3 minutes.
Okay.
I can give a 30-second buffer because of the video.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, Ariana. I will take this and this. And next up, okay, now I'm holding two microphones. So next up we have Teresa Clark from Everstar, the Chief Nuclear Officer, who is accelerating nuclear licensing with AI. Take it away, Teresa.
Maybe I'll have slides. It's cool. So if you are out there and you think that we need more energy to power all this AI, say woo. All right. So one of the best ways to get that energy, as you heard earlier from my colleague Christine and from one of the multiple Congress people today, is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy has a history and a keyboard setup assistant that is not helpful to it, but luckily it's having a bit of a glow up, pun intended. Womp womp. Okay. Everstar's purpose is to take nuclear from its past history that was not conducive to moving fast and help it move fast with nuclear smart AI. And so this is what nuclear has looked like for the last 7 decades. Old documents, typewriter fonts, handwriting, little notes that you can't read and yet are pivotal to safety decision making. This is what nuclear can look like today when you use a modern platform like Everstar's, where all of the information is at your fingertips. You can run automated workflows, you can draft complex documents, and get your permitting done quickly. Now, that information that you couldn't read on that typewritten table and that handwritten drawing is all right there, properly pulled out with AI-assisted document intelligence. This is how, when I worked at the regulator, we would find the right guidance by paging through a bunch of very helpful government websites and hoping that we knew where to find it. This is how you can get that information today. You don't have to know what to ask. You don't have to know how to prompt engineer. You just tell our platform, tell me about how the guidance for pipe breaks changed. And you can get sources cited authoritative information right away to help with the knowledge gaps as our workforce turns over and as our depth of knowledge is so critical to moving nuclear forward fast. I didn't even hit that button, but okay. This is what data analysis used to look like. Every pivot table skill that I learned can now be obsolete. Now, right in our platform, okay, it clicks when there we go. Now you can say, take this data from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission about people whose violations and figure out what I should watch out for when that inspector's coming to town. And immediately you're gonna get answers, you're gonna get charts, you're gonna get graphs. You don't have to waste your time sifting through data and using my outdated Excel skill.
30 seconds.
Yep. This is what licensing used to look like, typing up a bunch of stuff and hoping the regulator would get it, copy and pasting. This is what licensing can look like now. Tell our AI the problem. It will help you get to the solution faster with the humans in control all the way through. It can even do simulations, run code, help you assemble the right process. This is what, if I get to the next slide, looking at we're operating a nuclear power plant used to, okay.
That is time.
All right.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you. All right, next up, we have Ishan from Neuroscale AI. Is Ishan in the audience? Okay, awesome, great. Was not in the green room earlier, so I was sweating a little bit. But thank you so much for coming. So Ishan is with Neuroscale AI, which is scaling structured human judgment with AI. Ishan, take it away.
Hey everybody, my name is Ishan Jadwani, and I'm the founder at Neuroscale AI. We're focused on applying AI to one of the most important functions of our government, recruiting. Our nation is in an active war for talent. There you go. America is in an active war for talent. The next decade is not going to be won by our hardware investments or our budgets. It's going to be won by people. Yet federal hiring today has not been built for this reality. Most recruiting starts by posting a job and then waiting and waiting and waiting. The best candidates in the private sector don't apply, and they certainly aren't scrolling USA Jobs. So to solve this, we built Arby. Arby is a unified AI recruiting platform built for federal recruiting teams. I apologize about the slides here. Let's see if it'll go forward. If you guys can hit forward a few times, that'd be great. Okay, fantastic, no problem. We built Arby. Arby is a unified AI recruiting platform built for federal recruiting teams to proactively discover, evaluate, and engage talent at scale. Arby consolidates the internet's available workforce, over 1 billion profiles worth of skills and experience into a single system of intelligence. Instead of starting with a job post, you start with a search. So let's say we're looking for an IT specialist in Dallas, Texas. Simply provide that to Arby, and Arby will scour the internet and your ATS to find the best candidates that meet your requirements. And maybe this IT specialist needs Microsoft Azure experience. Arby can evaluate thousands of profiles in 30 seconds against your criteria and provide you exactly who fits your requirements and why, with full explainability. And then, the most important part, best candidates are not going to be looking for jobs, so you have to meet them where they are, which is having effective outreach. Arby looks across the internet for personal emails, social profiles, and any communication methods that we can use to generate personalized outbound messaging and reach them in their inbox. And this is no longer theoretical. Neuroscale was recently awarded a direct-to-phase 2 SBIR from the United States Air Force to help accelerate operationalize Arby in DoD environments. And at this point, Arby is now building the next wave of talent intelligence, and we're so excited to bring that to you guys. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Ishan. Could pass off the mic and the clicker to John from Civic, who is building software to streamline legislative workflows with AI. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Catherine. And thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm John Kokot, co-founder and CEO of Civic. We make an AI-native platform for Congress, state legislatures, governors, cities, counties, and anyone who has constituent communications. So we've had over 200 conversations on Capitol Hill and those bodies that I just talked about, and we've heard one common theme, and it's that they have AI, they being corporations, lobbyists, advocacy groups, we don't. The amount of emails, phone calls, and other correspondence that has been generated by AI in the past few years has skyrocketed. And on the government side, they just don't have the tools to handle this inbound. So we've created a system that does 3 primary pillars. Handle the messy inbox, that's the correspondence, handle casework from end to end, and then be able to retrieve and use institutional knowledge more easily using retrieval augmented generation, agentic RAG chat. So here comes the demo. It's real fast. I'm gonna go at 1.5x speed here. All right, there's no permission to the file, so I'll go ahead and talk over it. So we have an inbox. We sync with an Outlook, Gmail, web form, all forms of communication to create one centralized inbox. We then can read the context of those emails, be able to classify based on bill and point of view on that bill, anti or pro or neutral, or a topic, to be able to then sort those into different buckets and then help a team respond more efficiently to those inbounds. We then take those classifications and those metadata tags for constituents and create constituent profiles that can be viewed on a map to do more sophisticated outreach to people. The second component is casework, in which we take an inbound case, which is someone's having a problem with the Social Security Administration and their benefits. They reach out to their congressperson. This then triggers a case which requires a lot of documentation and a lot of back and forth between the constituent and the agency. We classify all that, again, enable reporting and better data analytics on performance of agencies and internal operations. The last pillar is to take all of their internal documents and put them in a data room and enable natural language processing chat against that data room to say there's a document from 10 years ago and you have an upcoming meeting with that organization. Help me build a briefing book for that meeting using our historical context. So that's Civic in our Revere platform in a nutshell. And to Congressman McCormick's point, we're keeping the human in the loop and we're creating better relationships with constituents through our platform. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, John. And really a huge shout out to all the demoists so far that have faced a little bit of technical difficulties on the stage. Thank you all for your adaptability and for keeping the show running. Next, one other thing is, maybe it's not the best idea to use the public Wi-Fi, but if you have feedback for any of the demoists that have gone so far, feel free to go and make those updates on the demos.aicollective.com website. All right, next up, we are bringing to the stage Gabe from Capital AI, who is working on extracting decision-grade intelligence from internal data. Welcome to the stage.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm unclear as to who's who here, but imagine this. Your boss or your boss's boss asks you that I need the 50 top AI researchers from China. I want to know where they went to school. I want to know their publications. I want to know where they're being published and who's reading it. That would currently take probably 15 analysts across 10 different agencies, 10 days to figure out, to do. What Capital AI is doing is compressing that timeline into a matter of minutes. The way that we do that is by providing decision-grade intelligence and artifacts. Think a PowerPoint presentation, a report, an Excel spreadsheet, to decision makers by using proprietary data and open source data and using agentic AI to analyze all of it and give it and provide that decision-grade artifact. The genesis of this comes from, I'm going to give up on this. The genesis of this comes from the fact that there is simply too much intelligence out there, and there is neither enough time nor enough talent to analyze it all. What we are looking to do is compress those decision-making timelines, and for our for-profit partners, expand margins by being able to make decisions faster using, again, proprietary intelligence and open source data. Some of our current partners include some of the largest consulting firms in the world, like EY, formerly Ernst Young. We work with the US government, the UK government, organizations like Politico, who I believe is here. The long and short of it, anywhere where data matters, data integrity, data sovereignty, and enterprise security is our kind of wheelhouse. So I don't know how much time I have left, but I appreciate your all's time and patience.
You have a minute.
Oh, okay, great. The one thing that I will say is our partners come back to us saying, again, I go back to that initial question of those 58 Chinese AI researchers. That's just one question that you could ask. But imagine a commercial due diligence report for a Fortune 500 company. Again, takes dozens of analysts, endless hours late at night, and you simply can't throw enough time and talent and expertise at the problem to compress those timelines and expand margins. So whatever question you have that expands different silos, we can, again, help compress. So thank you all for the time.
Thank you so much. Next up, we're going to bring to the stage John from Trustable, who is operationalizing responsible AI. Actually, this is not John. Please introduce yourself when you get to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Anna, and I am here today representing Trustable. Trustable is an AI governance platform that provides enterprises the ability to document, manage, and report on their risk. AI governance around the world, compliance around the world is evolving, and Trustable provides provides organizations the opportunity to understand compliance requirements so that they can be compliant ready. Oh, sorry, through the clicker. Oops, okay. So how do we do this? Our 5 core pillars are allowing organizations to build AI inventory. This allows them to capture information about a business use case and help their cross-functional teams understand risk. By understanding their risk exposure, they can understand how to address and mitigate that risk.
Go broad and drown in noise, or go narrow and miss what matters. And that leaves a gap between the signal and when it appears and when a team realizes it matters. Teams then lose the ability to shape the outcomes. At Delve, we understand this problem very deeply because our founding team spent decades producing strategic intelligence for leaders at the highest levels of policy and commerce. Delve translates that expertise into purpose-built AI that puts the equivalent of our best analyst team members on every public affairs team's desktops. We ingest all the data that matters, structure it so that it can be analyzed at a very granular level, then build agentic workflows that mirror how expert analysts think and apply each team's context, everything about them and what they care about and what impacts them. So what is surfaced is exactly what they need to know. That means moving way past where my slides are supposed to be. Are you in a PDF as opposed to a PowerPoint? Okay, well that's fun. So that means moving from hours of monitoring to minutes. Instead of sifting through countless sources, analyzing them, organizing them, and formatting them, scroll on up. So then, oh no, now you scrolled way too much. No, please go one back. I mean, seriously, I thought I was gonna have control of the slides here. Instead of having to manually organize and format them, AI agents review all of the data in context, draft reports, and show why it matters. Next slide. Likewise, it's impossible to read and analyze all the bills, but Delves AI can analyze them against your specific, okay, well, are you gonna scroll or not? Like, seriously. I mean, we're up here trying, all of us worked hard to try and build something of meaning for this world. And then we look bad because we're not getting, we can't even keep the slides going. Great. Likewise, it's impossible to read and analyze all the bills, but Delves AI can analyze them for you against your specific context and interests to surface what matters, not because it pinged a magic word, but because it actually impacts your interests. Scroll just one page. And then there's hearings. It takes hours to listen and analyze them, often without a transcript because it arrives hours or days too late. Delves AI transcribes the hearings in real time, flags the moments that matter, and generates custom summaries. But public affairs work goes far beyond these formal deliverables. If you want to just scroll, might as well just go like 2 more in, since we're probably way over time. You can do 1 more.
Yeah, about 10 more seconds. Any last thoughts?
That's where Delves Deep Research Agent comes in. Can you scroll 1 more slide? To help you produce the answers and analysis fast. Helps you refine your question and allows you to collaborate with it on the draft to produce meaningful analyst-grade insights. Public affairs has always been about seeing what others miss early enough to act. Now with purpose-built AI, we can leave the see everything so you don't miss anything era behind us and empower public affairs teams to know what matters before it matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and to Thank you, Jeff, and to all of the other demoists. I mean, we really went through the gauntlet today with tech, and each of them stood their ground and kept the show going. So let's give another huge round of applause to all the demoists. Truly phenomenal job. Phenomenal job from all of them, from all across industries as well. We have cyber, nuclear, workforce development, public affairs. What an incredible array of startups, all based in the DMV. So that concludes the demo section, but it doesn't end here. This is where you all get to determine who is the most impactful, has the best technology, and is the best overall of the demos that we saw today. So we're gonna take the next 3 to 5 minutes to go and vote for those 3 categories. Again, you can scan the QR code or go to demos.aicollective.com to cast your vote. And I will be back on stage in just 3 more minutes.